Hello and welcome to another ranking of a bunch of roguelikes and roguelites that I've played in the last few months. This is the fourth installment in this ongoing series, so feel free to check out previous episodes, especially if you're looking for a more popular game that might have come out in the years prior. And since then, I've been playing a lot of roguelikes, and I'm really excited to share this bunch with you all. For those of you who do not know me, hello, my name is Mark, and I've been working in the video game industry for many years in many different fields, including playtesting, voice acting, voice engineering, game design, game directing, and also doing consultation work for video games specialized in roguelikes. I also have a series where I showcase roguelike games and demos that have been sent to the channel, giving my first impressions and overall feedback. And since the last time I've recorded tier list, this has pretty much become now a part-time job, so thank you so much for all your support. I couldn't have done it without you. Thank you for making this dream come true. All right, let me quickly explain how this is going to go. First off, I do have to bring this up every single time. This is my own opinion. If you disagree, then good. Let's have a conversation. Feel free to share your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I do tend to read all of them, and I always find it interesting to see different point of views and opinions on games. All of these games, I believe, have at least very positive reviews on Steam. This means that even if a game doesn't connect with me specifically, this doesn't mean that this won't be a game for you. So feel free to keep that in mind. I would say I respect all of these games, especially considering that a lot of these are very small studios and sometimes even solo developers. I'll be going through this list in alphabetical order, so if you're watching on YouTube, feel free to skip ahead using the timestamps. All the music you'll be hearing do come from these games. You can find them in the description down below. And if you enjoy this kind of content, feel free to subscribe and like. It really does help out the channel. First off, we've got Bad North. Bad North is a real-time tactical roguelike where you control different armies and you're trying to protect these islands from the Viking invasions. Now, you're going to be hearing me say this quite often, but the first thing that got my attention from this game was the overall visuals and vibe from the trailer. I mean, it looks so kind of cute and I don't know, it just has a really nice vibe. And also, there's not that many like RTS or real-time tactical like roguelikes out there, and so I was very curious to see how the gameplay was going to be. Basically, you have different little armies that you can control. You're just going to be moving them around in different spots on your islands. Each island is its own little level. You're trying to protect the houses from the Vikings. The more you protect them, the more you get currency, you get stronger, and that's the gameplay loop. Now, after having played like hundreds of roguelikes at this point, the things that really get my attention are having kind of unique twists or just unique gameplay mechanics, because there's a lot of the same stuff out there, which is fine, but I'm always interested in the more interesting looking games. And while this game is visually and mechanically interesting, unfortunately, I do think that the game does struggle a little bit in its actual core gameplay and strategy. This is actually one of those games that I feel like could have probably worked better as a non-roguelike. Every time you clear a map, you're gonna get currency and you can like improve your units by just leveling them up and also finding some roguelike elements like little items. Every time you start a new run, it's always going to be the same. There's very few amount of pre-run customization, which I do think is pretty important this day and age. So the first few islands you're going to be doing are pretty much always going to be the same, and it takes a while before things honestly get interesting, in my opinion. And the strategy is I don't think it's super extensive. I feel like if you have the archers against the shield people, the lancers against the archers are not great. Yeah, you move things around, but for me, it felt a little too repetitive, and I do think the game could have actually just benefited better by having more concrete islands and concrete kind of missions with very specific units that you could, you know, improve and evolve. Because every single run, the archers are always going to be the same. Every time you level them up, it's just the same level up. It's the same level 2, level 3 as any other run. The only roguelike elements, again, are going to be the random islands, which ultimately doesn't really change too much strategically, especially in the early game, and the items you're going to find. The items are, yeah, they're interesting, but I don't think they drastically change the mechanics or the strategies of the game. So yeah, ultimately, just thought I was a little disappointed to see this game as a roguelike, and it just took things, it took a little too long for things to get interesting. The runs are very, very long, and once you get to the very end, if you've lost a few of your troops, there is a kind of a permadeath mechanic where your army is gone forever. So like if you're like 40 minutes into a run and you lose your favorite little army, it doesn't feel great. That being said, again, the visuals are really cute in this kind of like disturbing way. The audio, the sound design is incredible. Every time like the enemies drop into the water, you have this little bloop, 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 It's it's so cute. I love it. I love the vibe and I love the idea that we're going for, and ultimately this game is quite unique. So even though this is not a game for me specifically, I could very well easily see some people finding this interesting, especially if you're into simpler tactical games. And even though the roguelike elements are minimalistic and I think are just too small, they still add a little unique twist to it. One thing I'll say is that even though the permadeath mechanic of your units just being gone forever if they're done, if they die, it does make the game really tense. And since the runs are long, if you're like 40 minutes in and you have like this fight that's really close, it is very tense, which, you know, is a pro and a con, but that's something to keep in mind. So if this sounds interesting to you, then I would honestly definitely recommend checking this out. Even though I am going to put this as a C tier, the game is unique, and if this looks interesting to you, then definitely check out Bad North. Next up, we've got Blueprints. Boy, oh boy, where do I even get started on this game? Blueprints is a first-person puzzle roguelike. This is one of the bigger roguelikes that I haven't really made a video about on my channel, and there's a good reason for it. For anybody who's played Blueprints, you might know that it's kind of hard to talk about this game without getting into spoilers, and if you know me, you know I like to get into a lot of details about games. So that being said, I will definitely be able to talk about this game without getting into spoilers. I've got a lot to talk about, so let's just jump right into it. When I was first introduced to the concept of Blueprints by a friend of mine, they told me it was like a roguelike puzzle game, and I was like, that's not possible. That's not a thing. And, you know, there's a good reason why I thought that, because ultimately roguelikes and puzzles don't really tend to blend in very well. A lot of puzzle games, well, especially these kinds of puzzle games, are about, you know, trying to find the answers of something that you are unfamiliar with, and once you get it, you get this little click, and then it's just brightens, like it opens up and you understand everything. And ultimately, that's the thrill of a lot of these kinds of puzzle games. But a roguelike is the opposite. You repeat the same thing over and over again, so you can't easily just repeat this like aha moment that you get in puzzle games versus roguelikes. So I was kind of skeptical about Blueprints just by its core. But ultimately, I will say they did a really, really, really great job blending these two counterintuitive subgenres pretty much into a very unique and amazing game. So basically, you're playing as this character that's going through this manoir. How do you say it? No. Manor? Oh. Big house. And every time you encounter a door, you can draft a room. And this is where a lot of the roguelike elements are going to be. Here, the drafting, you get to select from a selection of 3 possible rooms. There's a lot of possible rooms to choose from. Some are you're going to be unlocking later on, blah, blah, blah. But ultimately, you're going to be creating a brand new house every single time, every single day, or every single run. And every room kind of has like little secrets, little hints at different puzzles that you can ultimately try to unravel throughout your playthrough. There are some actual puzzles that get randomly generated, but those are not the important stuff. There are always going to be bigger puzzles that are going to require just knowledge until you get the aha moment, and once that's solved, it's solved forever. So it does blend, you know, traditional puzzle elements with the roguelike tag, and the roguelike stuff makes things very different, and ultimately it is a little controversial in the community from what I've seen. Yes, this means that you're going to be gathering hints, and as you gather hints, you're going to figure out something, and you need to get to that room to uncover it, but you can't because the game didn't give you the correct RNG to get to the right rooms or the right combination of rooms, and so you have to wait a little longer, and that can be frustrating for some people. But for some others, it can do something a little different, because what Blueprints does very well is that there's not just one puzzle to deal with. There are hundreds that you're going to be gathering hints here and there from different sources, and ultimately this means that some people are going to be stuck on one particular thing they want to figure out, but you don't have to do that, and the game tries to push you to not focus on just one thing, and instead just open a bunch of different paths and options to just uncover all the mysteries the game has to offer. And the game has to offer a bunch of mysteries. This game goes deep. And then when you go deep, it goes deeper. And when you thought you went deep, you go deeper. And it keeps on going. There are entire YouTube channels just dedicated to uncovering the niche aspects of like the lore and certain puzzles. I think we're still at the point where we still have not uncovered every single puzzle out there, which is crazy in this day and age for video games. This kind of reminds me a lot of like games like Noita, Outer Wilds, where yes, your first playthrough is really what's going to be, you know, amazing, and once you get those first discoveries, oh, it's gonna feel great. I personally think the roguelike elements actually make this game better if you are patient. In terms of elements that I would love to see added or changed, first off, the obvious is there's no save feature in this game, which I find absolutely crazy. Like genuinely, so I was playing this game with my girlfriend, and she doesn't play many games, and you know, the fact that we would start a day and you don't know if a day is gonna last 10 minutes or an hour and a half. Yes, these can happen, which is awesome, but you don't have a save feature is, to me, kind of crazy, because we wouldn't be playing this game if we just didn't have the time, because we couldn't commit to not knowing how long a day was going to last, which I really hope they're going to add that, but it's been a while. I just still am surprised they haven't done it. Another thing is you're going to be taking a lot of pictures in this game, like with your phone, because the game doesn't tell you anything, which I can understand can be a little hard to get into for some people without like, there is a clear goal that they gave you at the beginning, but keeping track of puzzles can be a lot. So you're gonna have to take pictures on your phone. And like everybody who plays this game has like folders of crazy amount of stuff, because there's puzzle elements everywhere, which is, you know, part of the amazing aspect of this game. I feel like this game would have been really cool if within the actual lore and the story, very early on, your character finds a camera, and then you could actually take pictures in-game. You do it yourself. It would be the same thing, but then you would have your folders and all your pictures in the game, and you could kind of like link that with your, I don't know, with the story. I feel like that would be really cool. Obviously, that's not going to be added, unfortunately. That's just a little too late now, but I don't know. I think it'd be nice instead of having my entire phone full of a bunch of blueprints pictures. And while I do love how deep this game gets, late game puzzles are so ridiculous that honestly, without looking it up, it's kind of impossible for some of them to be figured out, in my opinion. Now, some people might say that, you know, that's part of the charm of this game, is that there are some things that are so complicated that people have never figured out, and that's awesome. And I agree, but I also wish there was a kind of a way to know if something is doable and something is not. Obviously, you know, I wouldn't want the game to tell you outright, this is a hard puzzle, this is an easy puzzle. I get it. But the fact that, you know, everything around you can be linked to a puzzle, and then if something is, and you realize that this puzzle is just impossible to figure out, it can be a little discouraging for some. And then lastly, now this is going to be more spoilery. I'm going to be talking about the room 46, which is the main goal of the game. So skip ahead to the timestamp if you want to skip this portion. Once you get to 46 the first time, the run ends, which I was not aware, which kind of sucked, because, you know, it was like I had a good run and I wanted to do more stuff, because you can always do more even if you beat the game. But I didn't want to go back there afterwards, because it just ended my day, and I didn't want that to happen again. There are more things in room 46, but you have to go there again later to uncover a new big quest. I didn't know about that. Now, I wonder how many people this happened to. So obviously this might be a very small thing if it just happened to me, but it sucked, because I ended up just playing the game without really understanding what I was looking for afterwards. And after like a few more days, I was just like, well, I'm kind of getting tired of it, because I just don't know what to do, until I realized that I actually had to go to room 46 again, and I had to look that up, which sucked. So I'm willing to bet I got unlucky with how things turned out, and maybe I'm alone on this. But yeah, I kind of wish that they didn't do that, because that really kind of ruined my experience for the late game stuff. I ended up looking up stuff instead of getting back into it, because I didn't see the quests. Ultimately, Blueprints is honestly kind of a masterpiece, because it's something very unique and it's done very well. It's really enjoyable for non-gamers, gamers, puzzle lovers, roguelike lovers, maybe. In any case, it's a really good game. I like to call this kind of like a escape room roguelike, and I think that, you know, if this looks interesting, and let me tell you again, like, it might seem simple at first, but the game gets deep. I think the game does a pretty good job at getting people into it at first. Now, one other thing that I've noticed that people have been complaining about is the randomness element of it, right? Like, obviously there's a big conversation around that because it's a roguelike. Now, I think the randomness can be frustrating, but I think that's not the major issue in my opinion. I think one thing the game could have done a little better is really hone the idea that randomness is not a problem. What I mean by that is people think that, you know, having multiple days, like being on day 2, 3, 4, 5, and like skipping a day is a big deal. It's not. It really isn't. But the game doesn't really give you that information very easily, in my opinion. I think people really feel terrible if their day was bad, and they're like, oh, stupid RNG. But ultimately, what's important is just getting information, even if you have a bad day. So I think the game could have done a better job at just saying, hey, don't worry if you have to end a day early, not a big deal. I think that mentally, psychologically would have helped a lot of people that are frustrating with the RNG elements. There's still some, you know, randomness elements that are frustrating if you're really trying to do something and you don't get the right room. But a high-level player, you know, can, you know, manipulate these very well, which means that there's a lot of skill involved, even though there are still roguelike elements. Also, the community around this is amazing. I follow a lot of channels, and I think it's really cool to just see the different conversations and all the different discoveries and the crazy challenges that people do with this game. Day 1 completion, Day 1 dare mode completion, I think was just completed like yesterday by a YouTuber I've been following. Super cool stuff. Blueprints is a pretty obvious S-tier game. I call these knowledge-based progression games, and I am obsessed. Yes. Exactly, yeah. There's not that many out there because they're really hard to do. Once one comes out and you get to play it and you get to experience Outer Wilds for the first time, it's so good! And Blueprints does get that feeling that very few games can. So, yeah, it's so cool. Yeah, I've got an entire folder on my computer for screenshots and notes. Yeah, welcome to my life and many others. Next up, we've got Clover Pit. Clover Pit is a slot machine roguelike. Now, funny enough, we've actually already had a slot machine roguelike that did pretty well a few years ago. It was called Luck Be a Landlord. Clover Pit is kind of like Rogue Be a Landlord, but it also takes inspiration from 2 other games in my experience. Those being Balatro and Inscription. So basically, you're this character playing in first person, you're in this locked room, and you have to gamble. Once you get enough money, you can get to the next round, then you get more roguelike elements, and you're trying to escape this locked room by just giving enough money, getting the key, and getting the hell out. That's the core of the game. Pretty straightforward. I want to talk about the 3 games that it takes inspiration from, because it does so in a fairly unique way. Luck Be a Landlord, obviously, the inspiration, I mean, it's just, you know, it's a slot machine, as you can see. It's not as crazy in terms of all the content being on that slot machine compared to Luck Be a Landlord. Luck Be a Landlord is just a 2D screen, and you're just gambling away, and you're doing some crazy stuff with all the different icons. Here, the icons are not as much of a priority compared to Luck Be a Landlord. It almost feels like an excuse to just have this whole game by having slot machines. It could have been something else. I do see some Balatro in the way the kind of the scoring system works. I mean, Luck Be a Landlord does the same thing, but similar. But basically here, yes, the icons are important, but it's more the multiplicative aspect of the fact that you have the different symbols that can be increased and duplicated, but you also have a different how they're positioned that can also be duplicated. So you have multiple ways to duplicate and doing an additional bonus on your symbols, an additional on your positioning, and then duplicating those. It's all about just duplicating and multiplications. Passive abilities that you're going to be getting on the side of your slot machine right here. That's what's really going to be creating a lot of the crazy stuff. And yes, it's going to be a game where you're going to start with just having 30 points to having trillions and trillions at the end if you do the right combos. And there's a lot of different builds, but ultimately, I get more of a Balatro feel from it gameplay-wise. And lastly, obviously, the Inscription vibe that you get. I mean, I'm sure there's other games, obviously, that it takes inspiration from, but overall, that's what caught my attention originally, is that you're stuck in this little room. You can kind of interact with your room. You don't have to constantly be on the slot machine. You can go to the toilet right there and, you know, do your business. That's a thing you can do in this game. You can try to open the door, there's a little telephone, and yeah, there's this kind of eeriness to the game that was really exciting when I first saw the trailer. So the gameplay is awesome. I love the gameplay. If you've played Balatro, if you've played Luck Be a Landlord, you're going to really enjoy this game. There's some crazy stuff you can do. The more you understand the game, the more you unlock different relics, the crazier things are going to be. I think ultimately they just did a really solid job. there's nothing crazy unique. That's not obviously a bad thing. It's just that there's a lot of these games out there right now, and I think this game is really on par with having crazy big numbers, right? We love seeing them. I've played a lot of different runs, and it always felt fairly different depending on what I was going for and the relics I was able to find. The roguelike elements are really cool in the way that you can purchase a bunch of relics, but there's also the phone that will give you passive permanent abilities, like bonuses, you know, like increased chance of finding specific symbols, doubling the value of certain things, these kind of things, and in combination with the relics, it's gonna be a lot of fun. But obviously, the whole kind of plot and story and vibe is what, you know, got me to stay playing for a little bit longer. At first, you don't know what's going on, then you get some weird stuff happening with the door knocking, and you're like, ah! And then you're really trying to escape, right? Like, yes, Luck Beyond Landlord was simple, but I didn't really care about paying my landlord. I mean, screw my landlord. I mean, hopefully you're not watching this. Here, there's a bigger incentive. You're being locked away. You don't know why, and you want to leave, right? That's what kept me going to get the key and get out, and that was really satisfying. That being said, I will get into spoiler territory again. I won't be doing this with every single game, but I do need to mention something, because the reason why this game is not like a complete S-tier game, spoiler already, is because of one thing that is in the spoiler territory. So another timestamp if you want to skip that. My spoiler is that there are no spoilers. Let me explain. My genuine issue with the game is that this might have been my fault, but I was actually looking forward to kind of like an Inscription kind of subplot, story, you know, freaky stuff. When actually, all the things I've described is kind of what I thought was gonna happen. But the thing is that there's not much in this game outside of the gameplay. And I think that's a bit of a missed opportunity personally. I feel like even if they didn't have to, you know, have a crazy story, plot, lore, like those deep stuff, that's fine. But I kind of wish there should have been more events, more freaky stuff that occurred. You know, like when I first unlocked my first body part, the corpse hand and everything, I thought this was part of like a whole subplot of like mysteries and stuff, but no, it not really. Like, yes, once you've gotten out, you do need to do a few things, and then there's a true ending that you have to do something specific. I've seen the true ending, I haven't done it, but it's cool, you get to see a different ending. But I feel like this game could have done more. You know, even if it was like moments of like in a random run, at one point, boom, a power outage, everything becomes red, and you get a voice saying, oh, you know, please stay still, blah, blah, blah. And then you look around and you see some weird stuff, and then the phone says some weird stuff, and then you have to press a button, and now the power is back on. Nothing would have changed, but at least these kinds of elements I think this game could have had. I guess I got my expectations too high in that regard. I guess it's on me, but I could see a world where this had a bunch of, you know, random events and spooky things and different rooms that you could explore, or like, you know, at one point the door opens and you just go into this alleyway, and then at the end you fall unconscious and then you wake up back here, you know? Doesn't change anything gameplay-wise, but I would have loved to see that. So that's my only grip, honestly, with this game. Other than that, a few other random notes I have. The animation can be a little slow, even when you speed up the animation of like having cards coming out, like tickets coming out and stuff like that, does get a little tiring if you've played a lot, in my opinion. Some of the cards that you'll be unlocking that kind of give you like more customization of pre-run, without getting to spoilers, a lot of them are not super interesting to me. Some are really cool, others are whatever, they're very situational, which, yeah, some people like. I thought, But other than that, the game is super fun and has a really cool vibe to it. So if you liked Inscription, if you like Balatro, if you liked Luck Beyond Landlord, or if this looks interesting, I would highly recommend it. I do hope they will add more stuff throughout the different updates. I'm not too sure what their plan is, but as it stands, the game is very solid. It was a really good time, so I'm going to put this game as a solid A tier. Next up, in queue with the music, we've got Die in the Dungeon. Die in the Dungeon is a turn-based roguelike dice game where you have dice and you're gonna place them on a board and different dice will do different effects. You combine them to do some crazy combos, and it's a dungeon crawler where you're going from floor to floor until you reach the final boss. rinse and repeat. This game is in early access. It took me a while to get to, but I'm glad I did because this game is really unique. I've played a lot of dice games. I always find it interesting having to deal with the inherent handicap of designing a dice game, considering that it just adds a lot of luck when you have a six-sided die, and all these can have different numbers randomly. Considering that a lot of dice games are going to be turn-based games tend to be very strategic. Adding a lot of luck can make things frustrating. So I always find it interesting to see how they go about this kind of restriction. Now, in the case of die in the dungeon, the die aren't just a d6 and, d8s and d4 and that's it. Every dice will have a unique effect and will have unique numbers that you can adjust and move around, and you'll have a bunch of numbers. So there's a lot of customization on the dice, a lot of customization on the board. The enemies will interact with your board, place things on your board that you have to deal with. They'll have different effects. Your character will have unique passives. You'll have different dice you can draw from. There's a lot going on in this game. Is the game overwhelming? Yeah, it is a little overwhelming, especially when you get started, because not only do a lot of these dice have a lot of, again, very specific mechanics, but also, while I love the art style, I will say, visually, this art style is not really helping with this kind of gameplay, because it's one of those games that has so many little keywords, but everything is written in small text, and it's kind of all over the place, and it's hard to see an icon that's specific to your dice and understand what it does. Like, you'll look at your dice, and then the little corner on the left, on the right side, when you look at the description, that's what it will do, and it's hard to keep track of everything. And this is one of the few times where I will say that the art is great, but unfortunately does make the game harder to play. Now, in terms of the dungeon crawling aspect, this game has a lot of content. You have different characters. Obviously, they will all play really, really differently, considering that they have completely different boards, different die to start with, and different passives. So each character is a brand new adventure, which is awesome. They currently only have 3. I don't know, I'm assuming they're going to be adding more and more, but even with 3, runs will feel drastically different. There's a lot of die. They have a lot of, I think they're regularly giving this game updates, so it does feel fairly fresh every time I come back to it. Now there are potions that have been added fairly recently, and all the different passive relics you're going to be finding, just like in Slay the Spire, are really cool. They really add a lot of variety and uniqueness to different playstyles. The events you'll be encountering, they put a lot of effort into them visually and theme-wise. Instead of just being a text, they even have, unique sprites and animations every time you encounter an event and you have to do a choice. I love events in my deck building games, and I just, even though it might seem small, it like you saw that one with all the arrows, that's an event. That's so cool. That really immerses you in this dungeon crawling experience, which I really, really appreciate. I think the game does struggle with balance in a few realms. The game, with its own unique mechanics, creates really interesting and unique gameplay, but ultimately, currently, I do feel like once you get past a certain part in the game, finding new die don't really feel very satisfying. It's not as satisfying to me as finding a really rare card in Slay the Spire, if that makes sense. I can't explain exactly why. Also, if you have a very defensive deck, if you just didn't get a really good deck, you don't necessarily die, but runs will just get extremely long. I've gotten into runs, builds, where I just had a really defensive deck because I didn't really have a choice, and I ended up just fighting the boss, and it took me 15 minutes to kill the boss, and that happened more than once. Now, yeah, you could say, well, you just gotta play better and just not get into these situations, but I've played a lot of these games, and when I get into these situations, then, yeah, I didn't know the game very well, but I just didn't want that to happen in the first place. I do feel like there are certain dice mechanics that are just kind of inherently better than others, such as the terrain dice, which just boosts the effect of anything you place on that board, on that space. These dice, to me, seem kind of crazy powerful compared to a lot of things. So I can see it's really hard to balance a game like this. Oh, and also one random little note, elites are not their own thing. They're just multiple waves of normal enemies. I think they just recently added one elite specific monster, but to me, this should have been done from the start. I don't like having multiple waves because it's just wasting time. I would rather just have a harder fight. I think these are more interesting. So I do hope that it's just because of early access that they're doing that. And I would hope that all elite fights are just one bigger, scarier enemy. I think that's more interesting. That being said, I still have been having an absolute blast playing this, and I do think that if you're into a strategy kind of experience that uses dice, a deck building game, and you want a little bit more to think about, this game's for you. It's either too easy or too hard, depending on what you end up finding, and once you do get to understand the game, you're gonna have a lot of fun, but hopefully you can stick long enough to not get overwhelmed. But thanks to the crazy amount of content, again, the different shops, different events, different dice, the different characters, all this. This is a game that I can see had a lot of work put into, and I'm definitely excited to see where the game is gonna go post its early access. As it stands in its early access state, I think this game is really solid, but it can be a lot for new players. The core gameplay is really unique and interesting, but can sometimes be dragging. It can sometimes drag depending on the kind of run you have. Dice don't feel as exciting as other deck building games in my opinion, but again, with everything being said, I still think this is a really solid game. I'm going to put this as a high B tier for now. I could see this going up in its final release. We'll see how that goes once we get there. Next up, we've got Dome Keeper. Dome Keeper is a digging roguelike, I guess is the closest thing I could say. This game I think is a little bit more niche. I don't think many people know about it, but I'm really excited to talk about it because, again, it's pretty unique and it's pretty great. Now, this game kind of reminds me a lot of a game called SteamWorld Dig, which originally, I remember when I first played SteamWorld Dig, I actually thought it was a roguelike, but it's not. This, on the other hand, is very much is a roguelike, and I think fits quite well in that realm. So in this game, you control this little character. Every single run, you just land on this planet. I think there are different planets. It's just more of a visual thing. And you're just digging away. You have different currencies or different metals you can find that you can spend on different resources. And you're ultimately trying to find the Mega Relic to destroy all the monsters. Perfect timing. I totally planned it. This game is really chill, while also being pretty stressful. Because every run, you're going to start with, nothing, and you're going to be very slow, you're going to be very weak. The more you find ores, the more you're going to be able to buy stuff, get upgrades, so you can dig faster, rinse and repeat, right? Now, the difference here is you're also going to be finding some tools. Not only does your character have a bunch of different things that can be upgraded, but you can also have this little guy, for instance. This is one of many different possible tools you can have. You can't have all the tools at once. I don't know if they're called tools, but in any case, I think they're called gadgets. There's also different kinds of domes you can have. Here you saw that there was a sword. You also bombs. There's just a lot of different things. I don't even know what that is. I didn't even know you could have that. That's really cool. Where the game shines really is all these little different ways to play the game is what keeps this game really exciting from a roguelike standpoint. And in between the digging aspect, as you can see, you're also defending your dome from the monsters. It has two very drastic gameplay loops: the digging and the defending. The defending is where you're going to be, actually shooting and using your domes like weapons to deal with all the monsters. That's where the more stressful elements come, because obviously you're going to be digging, you're going to be pretty deep, and then you have to go back up to defend from these things. Now, the defending aspect is pretty straightforward, and you want it to be straightforward. You don't want some crazy gameplay loop and mechanics for the defending, because obviously that's not the core of it all. It's mostly about the digging and the finding of all these random things you're going to be looking for. But I think where this game shines is effectively the replayability aspect, and the fact that every time you do a run, you're going to be unlocking new possible gadgets to find, and more importantly, also gadgets that you can start with depending on what kind of run you're doing. Because yes, at the beginning, things are pretty slow and repetitive as you're just playing the character. You always start the same way, very weak. But the fact that you can upgrade every single gadget and your character and your dome. You can upgrade everything in many different ways. And the cool thing is that you're not going to get every single upgrade to max at the end of the run. You're going to have to be selective with which aspects you want to upgrade every run, depending on the things you've got, but also the kinds of runs that you're doing. Because it's not just completing a run. There are different challenges that the game tries to push you to do. And by doing these challenge runs, you actually unlock permanent progression. It's kind of like a roguelite in that regard, but it doesn't really hold on to that as much as other roguelikes, if that makes sense. The challenge runs, I think, are actually more the core aspect than the random runs, which is quite rare for roguelikes. And the gameplay loop is just really satisfying, and I think the overall audio visuals really help with that. The audio is very minimalistic, very peaceful. There's a very small amount of music, similar to Blueprints in that regard. It feels like the music just really comes when it knows that it's important to be there. Otherwise, it's just gonna let you enjoy the little sounds of the little ores just bumping with each other. Bling, 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 bling. Even when the enemies attack, there's no like serious music. It's just, you know, like, and then you're attacking the enemies, and that's it. It doesn't feel like, you know, it's the end of the world every time. I haven't heard many people talk about this game, but I think this is kind of a hidden gem, honestly. The fact that I constantly unlock new gadgets that I can play with, and new domes that offer a completely different style of gameplay in terms of having to defend against the enemies, right? Like you have the sword, but you also have, you know, there's like turrets, gun, there's lasers. All these will have unique upgrade paths, and again, so it always feels like a unique experience. And there's also now a new character, and the character feels completely different, a completely different playstyle. So every run just feels like its own game, which is awesome. Even though, you know, you're just digging. Does the digging get repetitive? It can be. Sometimes the game can be a little slow depending on how lucky you are, because effectively the goal is to find that ultimate relic for a lot of the challenge runs. For most of the challenge runs, it's that. And it's just somewhere. And if you just happen to not come across it, you're going to be stuck for a while. Now, I've played maybe 8 runs, which might not feel like a lot, but the runs are quite long, as you can imagine. 2 of them, I feel like I didn't find the relic, and it just took me hours to, maybe not hours ultimately, maybe like an hour and a half, something like that. But for a game like this, it did feel a little slow. But again, thanks to the really satisfying visual effects and sound design, it really does still keep me wanting to come back to it when I just want to chill and have a good time. If this kind of gameplay loop or this kind of vibe looks interesting to you, then I would really recommend checking out Dome Keeper, because I haven't heard this game come up a lot, and it's really, really cool. I think this game is fully out, but I do believe they are still going to be updating more stuff. I would imagine that once you've seen all the gadgets, the game, you know, doesn't get as exciting. This is definitely a game to me where, you know, every new gadget is what's really, really exciting. So I could think of how I want to use that to my advantage and kind of change the way my run is going to go. That's really cool. There's also a lot of cool things to find down in the mines, and it feels really exciting to go down and find this really unique thing that you can interact with. Like, it took me a while to understand how that even worked, and then when I figured it out, I got a unique little guide that helped me collect my ores. I love those kind of things in my roguelike games. It keeps me coming back to it. I think I'm gonna put this as a low A, high B. I think I'm gonna put it as a high B for now, but I'll think about it later on. But yeah, really, really solid game. Definitely check it out. Dome Keeper is a great game. I have personal gripe with the achievements because I've spent hours trying to get the 1% health remaining achievement and have yet to get it. I remember the first time I played it was on my Steam Deck in an airplane. And it was like a 6-hour plane ride, and I just spent the entire time playing, pretty much. I was just like, I just love the vibe. Next up, we've got Deep Rock Galactic Survivor, or DRGS, I think. This is our first of quite a few Survivor-likes, or how I like to call Horde-likes. Now, actually, I believe there's going to be quite a few of those on this list, because between this tier list and the last one, I released a deep dive, kind of like video essay on the design of these games, so I played quite a few of those. This is a fairly standard Survivor-like, but it is in the realm of the Deep Rock Galactic world, which I am not familiar with myself, so I'm going into this. I went into this game only as just its standalone game. Now, this game is now finally fully released. I think it was in early access for quite a while, and it recently just released its 1.0. So I've gotten to play early access and full release. In terms of its gameplay, it's fairly standard. You know, it's your top-down-ish, with kind of like a digging mechanic as well. There was actually another game that did this previously, which was called Ripetendium. The only reason I remember the name of that is because it goes Ripetendium every time you open the game, which I guess really worked. You're going to be digging, looking for resources, looking for different minerals that you're going to be using for your permanent progression stuff. Yes, this is a pretty heavy roguelite, and especially with now the full release, they've added a lot of things that you can permanently upgrade. Honestly, I think this game has an insane amount of content compared to a lot of survivor likes. I haven't really delved much into the 1.0, but I've put in maybe 20 hours in total, and even in the early access there was a lot to do. But geez, now I could imagine I understand why people would want to play this game for a while. There's your usual, you know, just meta progression where you just like getting better stats depending on the currency you find throughout the runs right here. Like all these have required different minerals that you have to find, which is a cool little system. But now you can also have different equipment that you can find right here, and you can put them on different characters, which that adds a whole new layer that I feel like, I think Death Must Die, I forgot what it was called, did first. Now, in terms of the gameplay, it is fun. There's nothing crazy unique going on, I would say, other than just the digging and just things dying around you. At the beginning of each level, you have a mission to do, and if you complete the mission, you get a reward. Some games have been doing that to just, you know, to try to have an extra little thing to do during your run. The cool thing here is that the fact that you're going to be digging for different minerals, and you're going to be trying to be completing this little mini quest, and you're also going to have swarms, and you're going to have a payload that's going to drop. There's a lot to do during the run. You're not just waiting around for things to happen. There's always something to do. I do appreciate that. Like, exploration is pretty important. I feel like sometimes the levels are too short, which is quite rare for a horde like for me to say that. But I guess it's because, you know, they're trying to get things going because they want the player to play more runs as opposed to having the runs be longer, which I do appreciate in this instance because it has such a heavy focus on the roguelite elements. Okay, let's talk about the upgrading system, right? Because that's really where a lot of the thrill happens in a lot of these games. Just like a lot of survivor likes, every time you grab enough XP during your run, you're going to be giving a multiple choice option to upgrade your weapons or just your stats. This game really heavily focuses on just number adjustments more than mechanical adjustments. So it's just numbers, which is fine for this kind of genre. I will say a lot of times I do feel like if you get unlucky and you get a pretty low valued upgrade, that upgrade is really small. Some of the upgrades are way better than others depending on your luck. Now, I actually am an advocate for having upgrades have a luck, like literally the luck stat factor. So for instance, you know, like even though you can upgrade your gun's damage on a level up, I love the idea of having, you know, the common, rare, epic, or legendary on that specific upgrade. This is something that I'll be touching on more on different games that play around with that on this tier list. I always find it honestly really satisfying to, you know, get your legendary like movement speed upgrade, even though you want to go for the gun option. You're like, well, I guess I have to go with this, and it's not just always picking the legendary option because it just has better stats. I also like the fact that here the weapons upgrade has this little system that a few games do, where once you get to a certain amount of upgrades, it will evolve into a different kind of gun, and this is where the mechanical upgrades come into play. So here you'll actually, you know, like, oh, now your gun splits into two or does something unique, right? I like that a lot. And it kind of has a little bit of strategy into like, you know, oh, well, I didn't want to upgrade my common gun damage. I wanted to do my rare movement speed instead. But I want to upgrade, I want to evolve my gun, right? So I have to get to that point. I do feel like currently some guns don't feel as satisfying as others. And I think The visuals of this game are fantastic, which doesn't surprise me considering the IP. I feel like they put a lot of work into, making the game look and feel satisfying, and it does. But some weapons just don't, in my opinion, which I find kind of sad. Maybe it's just me, but I don't know. I mean, compared to other games of this genre, if they had this kind of, art and animation, I feel like they could have done, I don't know, something more than what we have. Yes, as you can see right here, this looks awesome. And once you've gotten the upgrades high enough, it is very satisfying. But at first, I don't know, it doesn't feel as crisp, and I think that is a very important aspect for this kind of genre. You really do want your guns to feel extremely satisfying, which I think they kind of missed the mark a little bit on that realm for this game personally. There's a lot of different levels, different biomes, different challenges that you can go for. There's also now there's like the payload, well, I forgot how you call it, but it's like the whole machine that you have to move forward with you, which is a completely different campaign. Yeah, where you have to move this thing around, and that's a new game mode they kind of have now, which is cool. I kind of prefer the original, personally, from what I've played. But in any case, yeah, they have that. They also have a bunch of different characters. Each character, there's only 4, but each of these characters can have subclasses, and each of these subclasses play very differently. So ultimately, I actually think there's more like 16 different characters, kind of. So yeah, to no surprise, this game has a lot. But in terms of its gameplay, it's fairly simple, it's very generic, and I think this is an easy one to grab if you like survivor likes and you want a game that has a lot to offer and this looks interesting, then I would say this is definitely a game to try out. I myself, after having played almost like 70 of these games, I would say that this is definitely on the better ones, which is to no surprise. But it's not going to be the one that is in my top 10s, It's good, and I think that I'm willing to bet that if I were to stick to playing more, which again, the game allows me to do very easily because of the amount of content and stuff to do, I would probably enjoy it even more. As it stands, this is going to be another solid B or low A. I think I'm going to put it under Domekeeper for now, just because Domekeeper is very unique. To me, uniqueness really is what I love. Everybody's trying to compete for a good spot here because we're getting to some really, really good stuff coming up. So yeah. Next up, we've got Drop Duchy, I think is how you say it. This is a Tetris land building strategy roguelike. Something like that. Now, this is one of many games that I've already covered in a previous video where I got more into details. But since then, the game is now, I think, fully out and has at least an update and different things. So I want to touch on that because it actually did touch on a lot of issues that I originally had with the game. So let's jump into it. The gameplay is you're pretty much playing Tetris-ish, right? You're placing down blocks, and each of these blocks will actually have different effects. Some are just going to be your basic blocks, which will be trees and plains, and by putting those and doing Tetrises, you're going to gain resources that you can then use to progress your roguelike elements in the game. But you also have units that you can place, and there's actually a combat system where you're fighting against the enemy that also is going to be dropping some stuff that you can position yourself, and then you have to fight at the end. There's a lot going on in this game. This is a really, really interesting and unique game, which obviously is what caught my attention in the first place. This game is really strategic. So the way the run works is that you're mostly going to be starting with just some plains and forests. That's what you're going to be using for most of your resources early on. Depending on the faction you start with, you're going to start with different production buildings, which will do different effects, right? And depending on where you place them, it's going to do different effects. I mean, this is no surprise, obviously, right? Further along, you're going to have a lot of different productions, and you're going to end up having some really cool strategies and different build paths to take. You can go for a river build. You can go for a mountain/military fusion build. You can go for a religion enemy-based stealing build. There's a lot of different paths, and that's thanks to the amount of content this game has. There's a lot to do in this game. At first, I do feel like I remember the game being fairly overwhelming. I wonder how much they actually changed that in their recent updates, because again, they did do a lot of changes recently, which I think is awesome. I remember at first thinking that the game was fairly boring and repetitive because I just hadn't unlocked enough things. Yes, this is a roguelite in the way where you're going to be unlocking a lot of things, not necessarily making you stronger. There is a little bit of actual meta progression where you are going to make your faction stronger the more you unlock things, but it's ultimately mostly just more things to play with and to encounter throughout your runs, right? There's this big meta progression tree. I do remember that this, unfortunately, does clutter your pool of options that you can encounter. Now, they didn't actually make it, I think, easier to re-roll rewards now, so it's not as problematic. These are all the different factions. There's even a third one now through DLC that you can get. All of them play drastically different to the point where now they pretty much feel like a brand new game. I'm really impressed with the design they came up with. It's really smart. It's really fun. The bosses that you'll be encountering also create this really cool puzzle element. Each of them is kind of like their own little mini game mechanic you have to, you know, figure out with the build that you have. I do wish that they would have more diversity in the bosses. It's always the same 3 bosses that you're fighting. Nothing changes between them. I'm not necessarily having brand new bosses, but maybe variety differences in the same bosses would be nice, because currently it's always the same, especially with how well done they are designed. I kind of wish I could see more of that. In their most recent update, they've added now the constellation mechanic, which is this kind of like cooldown effect that you can use whenever you want, such as, you know, transforming this wood piece into a plain piece, and you can do that every 10 things you bring down. That's really cool. It was a really nice addition. It doesn't seem too overwhelming. It's just a nice little thing to add. They've overall just made a lot of the quality of life issues I had better. In my previous review, I had so many quality of life issues. They've dealt with most of them, including my biggest one, which was that now there's a lot of options, including being able to just make sure that the pieces don't automatically fall. Yes, I know that normally in Tetris, that's core, but in this game it made no sense because it's a strategy game where you already had the option to not be forced to drop things, so it was really annoying, and now you don't have to do that, and it honestly made the game so much better to me because I wasn't just constantly pressing rewind. Actually, well, not literal rewind, because that was one of my other issues, is that there is still no rewind button, which I get because yes, if you drop something, you then see what comes up next further along. But the amount of times that people are going to be doing a little mistake, I feel like there should still be a rewind button, personally. Something that I think would benefit the game, but it's not a necessity. Between the fights, there's a lot of things to do in the map. I kind of wish they had more actual, you know, like Slay the Spire-like events where it's like, oh, this happened, what are you gonna do? And you have 2 choices. I think that would make it even more immersive. Outside of that, there are still, you know, just a lot of different, like, kind of like shopping options. Like, depending on which path you want to take, there's going to be different kind of terrains, and that is going to be beneficial or not, depending on your build. Some are going to have units, some are not. That's, if you don't have any units, it's going to be easier, but then the boss is going to get stronger. There's a lot of strategy to the path that you're going to take. I love deck building games that do that, because it's not just like, oh, just go to the next button quickly, whatever. You have to put some thought into what you're going to be selecting depending on what your build is focused on, and I love that. I think that's really, really cool. The end of the combat phase here, well, actually just the combat phase is called, but right there where you have this kind of like rock, paper, scissors system depending on the units, looks very simple and generic, but surprisingly, I actually think it's quite strategic. If you've played a lot of this game and you get to the late game, there's some crazy amount of different units and combinations that are around, and there's a lot of thinking to do in terms of, like, mathematically. I think they did a really good job having such a simple mechanic turn out to be quite strategic. The runs are really long, which I don't know how they could have changed that, because I feel like the pacing is pretty good. But by the end, you know, like, last time I played a run, I started at like 10, and then like it was almost midnight. It was like, okay, got it. Especially if you're not super comfortable with the game. If you get to the very, very final boss, man, you've gone through a lot of steps and a lot of hoops, and like strategically, it takes a while. That's not inherently a bad thing, but it's something to definitely keep in mind. I would say maybe 70% or even more of the issues I had on my first review were actually addressed, and that's just really, really cool. And I'm gonna put this as Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. I'm gonna put this as a high B tier for now. There's a lot of incredible things coming up as well. But still, too many good games. Oh no. Next up, we've got Elden Ring Nightreign. This is a Souls-like roguelike. And man, what a game. This is another game that I covered roughly when it first came out. Since then, I have changed a lot of my thoughts, and they've also updated the game. Gameplay-wise, it's Elden Ring. It's literally Elden Ring, with a few tweaks here and there. FromSoft is known for doing really satisfying, crisp gameplay. Every single sword swing feels incredible, and that by itself is going to be a great reason to just come back to this game, because it just feels so freaking good. So the gameplay is fantastic, and that by itself obviously is just going to make this game really good. No question, right? Like, it's Elden Ring with some extra flair. What's not to like about that? Now, I've actually played a lot of Souls games in my life. I know that right now I play like 90% roguelikes, but I really liked Elden Ring. I really liked pretty much all the FromSoft games, and when I heard they were doing a roguelike, I was very curious, because this is one of the few times where we've seen a big company actually try to, do a indie subgenre using some of their, actual game elements. Originally, when I first played it, I only did a single player, pretty much 100% completion. And since then, now I've played it in multiplayer. Now, I'll say it again, this game is fantastic in single player. It is really good in multiplayer. Obviously, that's where the game is really trying to push things, but I'm glad that they put a lot of effort making sure that the single player experience is also really good, because I think originally when it first came out, that wasn't really the case, and they've really updated it to make sure that that is now the case. That was my biggest concern originally. If you love Elden Ring, and you just want a different kind of experience, then it's definitely worth checking out just for that. Another thing that I do want to bring up that I haven't for other games, but I think it's important here, the price is not a traditional AAA price. They did tone it down, especially in this day and age when you have, your $20 Silksong and your $80 Mario Kart. Like, I'm glad they toned it a little bit down. They knew this is a spin-off. They knew it was something different and unique. And so that's something I wanted to bring up, because, if this was a $70 title, effectively that would actually change my opinion of the game, but it's not. So that's really cool. They've changed the gameplay a little bit in the way where now things are a little faster paced, because you can run around, you can jump super high. Well, you could do that before as well, but there's more mobility options. You also have your ultimates, you have different characters to play with, and there's now this kind of like Fortnite battle royale system, but in co-op versus PvE thing, where you have this zone that's closing in. You have a limited amount of time to traverse the entire world and to find your roguelike elements, your upgrades, in order to get strong enough to beat the true final boss of the run. I really respect and appreciate a AAA company trying something different. I think that's what we need in this day and age of people being really annoyed with AAA companies. I think this would really be one of the first steps they should take, is to try to do something different here and there. And that's what they did. So I love that. I really love they tried something different. You are going to be, looking around for different weapons. Each weapon, feel different, just like in Elden Ring, which is great. They also have their own stats that come with it. These are simple. Most of those things you're going to be encountering are just number adjustment effects, more attack, more dexterity, more like guard counter, that kind of stuff. They did put some mechanical adjustment abilities, such as, like if you walk, now you do like you have this little rain of spells calling down, or like rolling creates lightning around you. They did add that, which was quite surprising to me, because usually any roguelike that has a very strong core gameplay doesn't tend to have anything too crazy mechanically in the roguelike elements. They're not super interesting, actually, unfortunately, which is fine. I mean, again, if the core gameplay is great, that's fine. The other roguelike elements is that you're going to be encountering different bosses, and you're going to be finding different events throughout the realm. And that's the cool aspect from the randomly generated things, right? But you're still in one map. Now, I believe they're going to be doing DLC, and I'm hoping it's going to be a new map. It is not only just the same map, but a lot of the locations are pretty much exactly the same. Whenever you look at a chapel, it's like 3 options, and all 3 options have exactly the same enemy layout. Once you've played the game a few times, you're already going to get tired of seeing the same old layouts. I think this game could have had more content in that regard, and that includes more bosses. I think the final bosses are awesome, by the way. Those are really cool. You know, they were like, hey, it's still a Souls-like, so your final thing is just a proper big boss. Oh, it's always the same boss. They don't change its mechanic. That doesn't matter. It's super cool to face against these big bosses, and there's a lot of them. And they also do these like semi-weekly events where you can fight enhanced version of them with a unique third phase. That's really cool. They put a lot of attention making sure that the game is still up to date, and you know, with all these new events here and there. I just hope that the DLC is going to add more to encounter, because with just the same world and just a few little events here and there, and the fact that it's actually not really fully randomly generated, there's just different seeds, and you kind of start seeing that the more you play. It's not fully random. Recently, they actually finally added kind of like a hard mode. If you're comfortable with Souls games, then this game is actually pretty easy. I was consistently, you know, winning runs after I got comfortable with it. It feels great because originally you're going to be dying really quickly because you don't know how this game works very well. You don't know all the niche little things. So it's great to feel like you're just beating runs super easily because of your knowledge and your skill. It feels great. But once you got to that point, it was getting a little repetitive to just be able to beat things very easily. They've added a hard mode pretty much recently. I didn't play too much of it yet. I do like what they've added with, you know, some things that have downsides and unique cursed items, blah blah blah. Currently, it's kind of annoying where like you increase your ranking, and once like automatically, and the more you play, the higher your rank and the harder it is. But you can't try like rank 0 again afterwards. You're stuck to your ranking. You're forced to play at that ranking, which I think is pretty stupid because if you're just playing ranked, you're at rank 5, and then you want to, you know, experiment with something different. Well, you can't without playing their hardest difficulty. Otherwise, you have to play not ranked, and there's some things that just don't work in that mode. So that's kind of weird. I still have some issues with the overall information given to the player. Yes, most Souls games have pretty bad information, and that's kind of the charm-ish. But in a game like this, it doesn't feel great because when you're in a run, you can't really experiment because there's no pausing. Like, it's constantly going, which is kind of weird. It's kind of counterintuitive with the overall Souls genre, which is usually very slow pace, right? Here, it's a mixture of slow and fast. So it's very unique in that regard, which is cool. But especially in solo, I kind of wish there was a pause mode. I know that this game is not fully focused on solo play, but I really do wish you could pause. It's kind of annoying, including, you know, like when you find a reward and you want to look at like, ooh, that looks like it has a bunch of stats, but your inventory is full and you're being attacked by bats and the ring is now on you and you can't look at those stats and you can't go through your inventory. It can be quite frustrating, especially if you don't know every single weapon stats perfectly. I still don't like the relic system. They have this whole relic for like, you know, the meta progression aspect of it, and I think it is very disorganized. You get a bunch of them, then you look at your inventory in the hub, and there's just 100 different relics with all doing different effects, and you can look for specific things. It's just a mess. I don't like it, and it's also very unbalanced. Some relics are way better than others, but you won't know that because the information is also not very well done. So overall, there's still some things they could do, some quality of life things here and there. I am very curious to see where this game is going to go once there's DLC and throughout all the updates. But I love the fact that AAA company right now is putting so much care into their game and actually doing updates and really, you know, making the game better and better, especially with all their listening to feedback, which is great. You know, that's what AAA companies should be doing. So Nightreign is an easy S. No question. If you like Souls game, even though I have a lot of issues with it, just the core gameplay as a roguelike loop is so fun. The different characters are so different from one another. Some are way stronger than others in my opinion, but it's just really satisfying. This is one of those games I can just want to play a quick run, and it's quick. They did a good job making sure the pacing, yes, it's non-stop, no pausing, but that's great. You can actually just play a full adventure in just under an hour. It's a no-brainer. S tier. Next up, Gnomes. This is actually the first of a few games on this list that were actually just sent to the channel for the next big roguelike series. And after that, I ended up playing this game a little bit more because this game was really interesting. This is a tower defense map building roguelike? I'm not even sure how to categorize it. You're trying to protect your little house by placing gnomes, which are going to serve as your tower defense kind of guys, and other things around the map to just, you know, manipulate where the goblins are going to be moving around. Now, I've played quite a lot of tower defense roguelikes, and I always said that I think a lot of them really do struggle to get the tower defense and the roguelike aspects aligned very well. This game takes a different approach to that I find rather interesting, because a lot of times one of the satisfying aspects of a tower defense game is that you just place things and you just let it do its thing, and it's pretty chill and you don't have to think too much about it. Not with this game. This game requires a lot of attention and a lot of strategy every single turn, because instead of just placing your gnomes wherever you feel comfortable, you can move them every single round. And that's where a lot of the unique strategies come into play. The goblins that are attacking are always going to come from different places, and it's not just like one little entrance and just have a particular path. It's completely open. It's an open kind of like level, and you're the one putting the walls around. And one round are going to start over there, the other they're going to start over there. And you're going to constantly be moving things every single round. Not only your gnomes, sometimes other structures and other plants and crops around to just create this whole level filled with things that's constantly moving around. So the first thing I'll say is that this is not for casual players. I would say if you just want to just chill, relax, you know, play something for like 10 turns and see it just give you money and that's it, that is not this game. This game actually offers a lot of different build options. Each different biome is going to play a little differently, and we'll have different enemies. Here you have the forest, which will have the swamps, but you also have the desert, which can have different things here and there. So there's that. There's also the different classes to start with. So there is pretty cool amount of pre-game customization options. There's like 16 different possible loadouts to start off with, and a bunch of different levels and what biomes to go with. So that by itself is already going to make the runs feel unique from the start. But besides that, there's a shop, and every single round you can go in that shop. You can reroll that shop as many times as you want, as long as you have currency, and you can buy as many things as you want as long as you have money. There's a lot of buying to do in this game, which again does align a little bit with the fact that this game is not super casual, because it's not just like you wait around, then you get enough money, and then you get to your shop. Though every single round you probably want to go in the shop and buy a bunch of stuff. You're going to move your gnomes around, which end up meaning that this game is quite slow paced in that regard, and which is a very different approach than a lot of other tower defense games. But considering that you are expected to go in that shop often, and there's a lot of options, kind of like Balatro, Potato, these kind of shops, so there's just always a lot, and there's an infinite amount of rerolls, it does mean that, yeah, you do need to be patient playing this game. Any hardcore fan of this game, I could imagine just spending hours and hours and hours on them. If I'm not mistaken, this is a game that has a pretty solid community of people that are just dedicated to do some of the craziest builds. And there's just a ton of things to buy. There's a ton of different crops, there's a ton of different gnomes, a ton of different passive abilities. You're limited in terms of the space of relics, all the way to the top left there. Those are your relic spots right there. There's a limited amount of them, which does sound annoying at first, but you can expand that by using more money, and you have to be more selective. And ultimately, that just opens up a lot of different paths to different runs. So I was surprised with how strategic a simple-looking game like this ended up being. I feel like I would have to spend a lot more time to really get the best out of this game. But from the little bit I've done, I felt like every run felt quite different and was very enjoyable. Runs don't last a crazy amount of rounds, at least, thankfully, considering that there's a lot to do between the rounds. So it's still fairly casual in that regard, but it is a very strategic tower defense game, which again, Bloons Tower Defense is my favorite tower defense game out there, and it's probably the best out there in general. And that game is super strategic in different elements. I do like just that kind of just strategy mindset for these kinds of games. So I'm glad to see another one. The art is very minimalistic, as you can see, and you know I like the minimalistic aspect for a lot of indie games. Here, yeah, I mean it works for what it's going for. I will say that when things get very chaotic, it's not as satisfying as a game like Kingdom Rush or Bloons Tower Defense, but that's to be expected with the art style we're going for. Sometimes it's a little hard to know visually which goblin does what. But yeah, for a game that was sent to the channel that I just had zero expectations from, this game really did surprise me. It's a very unique take on the tower defense gameplay. I'm gonna put this as a good B tier. It's just that there's no bad B tiers, so I'll leave it as that for now. Next up, we've got He Is Coming. This game is I don't even know how to call this game, I'm sorry. You're walking around in the forest, looking for different items, and then by the end of the 3-day cycle, you fight a boss, rinse and repeat, and then you fight the final boss, and you're done with your run. Yay! This game did quite well a few months ago, and for good reasons. This is a very simple and enjoyable game with a really, really cool art style and a lot of possible builds. Now, this is one of those games similar to Loop Hero, where gameplay-wise, there's nothing to do. You're just walking around, grabbing stuff, and then it's an auto-battler. It has an auto-battler system where once you fight, you just let it happen, and you see whether you're going to win, which obviously is very simple. And if you're going to have a very simple gameplay, you better have some good roguelike elements. And boy, oh boy, does this game have fantastic roguelike stuff. There are so many different items, and pretty much all of them are mechanical like adjustment items. It's not just like, oh, +1, whatever. Most of them are just gonna are just gonna do crazy stuff. And then so there's so many build paths to go for. Whether you want to go for a bomb build, which triggers something, which then triggers something else, which doubles that, and then triggers that, and then refreshes that, and then you trigger it after 3 turns. Or you could go for an acid build by converting your armor into like something, sending it to the enemy, putting them a bunch of acid, stealing something. This is where things get really complicated, but in a good way, considering that gameplay there's nothing to do. And I love that. You know, I love simple games with crazy strategies. I think those are like some of the most interesting and enjoyable experiences. The forest is filled with different events and different icons to interact with. You've got, you know, like a character or a little thing that's going to allow you to fuse things together, create new items together if you have like 2 different food items, something that gives you different pendants, something that gives you unique weapons, different shopkeepers with different effects. Gosh, like even after having played for a long time, I still find unique things in the forest, which I love. It keeps you engaged. It keeps the mystery going. There's just so much to do with such simple gameplay. So good. There is actually some strategy to just walking around and making sure you pick the right path and look at your map, make sure you're looking for certain icons and ways to find different icons here and there. It doesn't get old, and thanks to the fast-paced gameplay where you can choose different speed options, even bypass all simple combats against random animals. You could just have those be automatic, which is so cool to have, being able to teleport around. The game doesn't get boring in my opinion. And there are 2 different game modes to play, and both of them are awesome. The first is just the PvE aspect where you're just fighting different bosses like here, and every single night you can see at the top over there, you can see which boss you're going to be fighting at the end of that 3-day cycle, I think. So you have to adjust your build accordingly, which you can. It doesn't feel like, oh, I had this build going and now I can't play that build anymore. I have to scrap everything. There are ways to kind of counter certain things here and there. It's really well done in that regard. The bosses all have unique mechanics that you have to adjust to, and they're all really cool. They're kind of like all their own little puzzle, little elements, right? This person will have acid, but I have a bunch of armor, so you have to deal with its armor. And with all the items that the game gives, yeah, it really does have endless combinations. Yeah, I have not gotten tired of this game yet. And this game is in early access, so there's still a lot that they're going to be offering, and they've been doing more and more updates, naturally, and all the updates have just been better and better. I still think the first map is better than the second map. that's to be expected. They had to, like the first map was super, super simple, and I think that's where the game thrives. The second map, obviously, they had to find some new things, so it's not as simple, but it's still great. The more I play it, the more I enjoy it. Now, the multiplayer element is where I think this game really, really bumps it up to the next layer. Because basically you're not literally playing against real players real time, right? No, you're just playing against different builds that people have found on this multiplayer mode. If you were to play and then you die on like the third night, then someone else is going to fight your build on the third night. And the goal is to try to beat like 5 in in succession, and then you can get the king. You can be like the king, and then you can go even further and try to beat like an unbeaten king, which is so cool. And so if you get to defeat a single one of them, it's a massive achievement for a lot of people, because there's obviously metas in this game with the amount of builds that you can do with this PvP aspect. Every single new cycle, you get to see which build the next opponent has. It's a lot of strategy. It's super fun. And that particular map that you're put into for the multiplayer aspect is really cool. Has a ton of things to do, and again, keeps it simple. So you don't have to worry about anything other than just trying to find the coolest build that you can possibly do. The visuals are really, really solid. It's pixel art, but it's not overwhelming. It's very, very clear. Everything looks very simple. The fact that every boss is red, that's it's cool. And the music is great too. I think some of them are being featured on this tier list, classic 8-bit music, and it's they did a really good job with it. I don't know what else to say. This is one of my favorite games of this kind of genre. And it doesn't take a lot to just get going. This does not require a lot of dedication, right? You can just boot this up, and even from the very first few runs, you get it. The fact that you can choose your bundles of items that you can find in the PvP mode means that you're not just having every single item possible. You can choose different bundles. That's so cool. It gives you a lot of flexibility and a lot of different paths towards potentially trying unique builds in the PvP mode. There's also a bunch of achievements that allow you to unlock more items. You can go in your achievements to see how to unlock new items by doing certain things. Yeah, no, this game is great. And I'm going to put this as an easy A tier, above or under Clover. I think I'm going to put it above Clover Pit. Next up, we've got Hollow Survivors. This is a fairly traditional dungeon crawler action roguelike, where you control this character and you're trying to escape hell, I think, or you're just trying to climb the tower in order to get to the top, where you can beat the final boss and rinse and repeat. This was another game that was sent to the channel that I reviewed on my next big roguelike series, and this was a game that really caught my attention originally, just because of, again, the overall vibe and art style that the game was showcasing on the trailers. And yeah, this game has a really, really cool vibe to it. It's one of those games similar to Hades, where you're gonna have your little hub world where you're gonna have your characters that you can interact with in between the runs. You can come back, you can upgrade, permanent upgrades, you can unlock new weapons. It obviously takes a lot of inspiration from Hades, but it's not as much of a Hades-like as other games, I would say. The rooms that you're fighting enemies are closer to like Survivor-like in that regard, where you're really being overwhelmed by hordes of enemies. You're going to be fighting your boons. Each of your boons are going to mostly give you, some mechanical upgrades and a few number upgrades here and there. But it's you choose your starting weapon that's going to have its own unique moveset. The gameplay feels pretty solid. It's very fast-paced, especially after you've unlocked your double dash. Some of the later floors are really, really fast and hectic, which is really cool. All the areas where you're fighting these enemies is an infinite floor. So like, it doesn't matter how far you go left or right, you're always going to have things to fight, and there's no walls. That's really nice, and it feels quite immersive, I would say, which I do enjoy. Now, I've cleared this game a few times now. It just had a big update, and it's added a few more things to play around with, which I do enjoy. And they've also added more late game content, which is nice, because once I had beaten the game originally, there was not much to do anymore. So there's a bit more to do now. I still feel like the game, even though this is obviously a very small team, could have a bit more content. I do know that's not always possible, but in this kind of game, I feel like, you know, having more unique events, more, you know, NPC interactions and more things to do, I think would really, really help. Because every time I would finish a run, I would, like, going back to the hub was really, really exciting for me, which is obviously something that's really cool in Hades. And obviously, this game can't be Hades. Not everybody can be Hades, but I think they could have added a little bit more unique events here and there. That includes as well in the run itself. You're mostly just going to be fighting the same, you know, hordes of enemies. There's no unique floors that much. I think having unique events would really help in that regard. Another thing is currently the room rewards don't feel great. When you're giving a boon, it feels great, but you don't often get boons. And this is one of those games where I just feel like there should be more mechanics, more things to play around with, because other than the boons, there's nothing else that's going to change your run. It's just the boons. There's no other passive effect. There's nothing else to find. You're just either find meta progression currency or boons. That's it. And there's not even a shop that you could find during your run, which I think this game would really benefit from. I think something that would allow you to have more rewards and that you could choose which rewards you want to go for, so you could have more, you know, player choice during your run, what I think would be nice, because right now it's just, oh, well, you clear the floor, you go to the next floor, nothing else to do. And if you don't find a boon, then you just kind of feel like you kind of wasted a little bit of your time, especially in late game when you've already unlocked pretty much everything. Even though they did add a hard mode, there's no real benefit to playing hard mode because there's nothing else to unlock once you've gotten everything, which in my little bit of playing, I've already pretty much unlocked everything the game has to offer. So yes, it's a small team, but I wish there was more. Some of the boons are really exciting, but a lot of them also aren't super impactful, and ultimately the weapons that you play with don't change the gameplay drastically like in Hades, and there's no unique upgrade to the weapon you're doing. It's just you're going to be having the same upgrades no matter which weapon you're playing with, which means that a lot of runs don't feel very different from one another. If you play until the late game, you're probably going to be having the same kind of run as you did before. Now, luckily enough, the core gameplay is satisfying. It doesn't feel terrible to just always be playing roughly as the same kind of runs, but once you've gotten to the end and you've seen the ending, then the replayability is a bit weak compared to other games of this genre. But getting to that point is really enjoyable, considering that the meta progression is pretty important. It was definitely a really nice kind of adventure getting to that point, and I really did enjoy that. But once I've completed it, even the hard mode stuff was just not something that was really, really exciting for me. I actually feel like they could have gone even further in the survivor-like aspect and put way more enemies and make things way more hectic. I think that could have been potentially even more interesting, but as it stands, it's a solid experience that I just hope they're going to be, you know, adding more than just late game stuff, but just a bit more content. I think more currency would really benefit this game, which is rare for me to say. But, you know, like mid-run currency that you could use for a shop, so you could have more, you know, player interaction. I think that would really help the game. As it stands, this is going to be a middle B, I guess low B for now. Yeah, if you like Hades and you want a quick, simple game that ultimately is quite hard, before you get all your meta progression, this game is a pretty big challenge. Some of those bosses are really, really hard to deal with. I think, again, the visuals are fantastic for what they're going for. The biomes feel very different from one another. I love the vibe they were going for. I wish they would put even more into that. But yeah. Next up, we've got Jotunnslayer Hordes of Hel. This is our second survivor-like game on this list. Plenty more coming up. Most of these games are going to be pretty straightforward in terms of the gameplay. Here, the visuals are a major part of this game. It's rather impressive visually, and it does take pretty big inspiration from Diablo 3. And as someone who was a big fan of Diablo games, I was very excited to play this game. Gameplay-wise, you're moving around, you have a dash, on a low cooldown, and you have your ultimate ability, which is a small little thing you can do here and there. But other than that, it doesn't do anything too crazy. All the crazy stuff obviously are going to be in the spells that you're going to find. I don't know how they call it in this game. Skill, I guess. Skill, there you go. Depending on the god that you're going to be finding, you're going to be casting completely drastically different abilities that look so cool. I mean, one of just like the level 1 spells is just summoning this huge ghost ship that just goes through the entire like map going brrr. That's just a level 1, non-evolved ability. Oh my gosh, it's so satisfying. To no surprise, this game is super satisfying visually, and the gameplay is really exciting too. This game was in early access for a while, and it just recently, as of recording this, and it's now on 1.0, they've added a few things from the full release. I didn't play too much of the full release yet. I am planning on. But there's a new map, a new character, new gods. They didn't change anything drastically other than just adding more stuff to it. This is a team that I think is really committing to make sure that, they're listening to the community feedback and adjusting accordingly, which I love seeing. Each character is going to play very differently from one another. They're going to have their own spells, skills, things to level up with. Basically, there's two things to level up. There are the gods that you're going to find and your own skills. Your own skills is going to be obviously character specific, while the gods you're going to be able to choose, and every single run you're going to be able to adjust which of the gods you want to pretty much find. This is a game that kind of does require you to go back and forth in your skill tree to adjust things accordingly for every single run, which is a little inconvenient. Now, I kind of forgot if they've changed that for the 1.0. I'd have to circle back. I don't think so, but I remember that was pretty annoying that every single run, now I want to try this god path, so I have to refund all my points and put it all in this god, unless you've filled up all of your meta progression. But this game is a game that has a lot of points to find for the meta progression. All the maps feel very different. Are really cool from one another. The big bosses you fight at the end, they're like big Diablo 3 bosses. Some of them are a little too close to Diablo 3, I would say. But they look really cool. They're really satisfying. They're great. It's a very fun game for this genre. It doesn't revolutionize anything, but it's just by its visuals and the fact that, it's just, if you've played Diablo games, you're probably going to really have a good time with this. Nothing complicated, and I would say that the upgrade system is very enjoyable because most of them are actually mechanical changes and not just like plus 3% something. Every time you upgrade, it really does feel impactful, especially with, all the different crazy god abilities you can find. Most of the fun I've been having is just picking a new god, looking at what happens when I get to that final level right there, level 18. Seeing how that ability now changes visually was one of the most fun things. And with the amount of abilities you can find, you're going to be spending a long time doing so. During the run, you have your little mini quests. You could choose which mini quests you want to go for. Some are harder to do than others. They'll give you better rewards. I think there's even like monthly events. I don't know if they still do that, but I remember the first time I played it, there was like a whole like goblin event happening, and some goblins would randomly spawn, and if you killed these goblins, you would get a bonus. Now, obviously, with this kind of visual and with a survivor-like genre, while the visuals are awesome, it is going to be pretty hard to see what's going on at all times. That is just inherently is going to be a handicap, and it is the case with this game. Sometimes you're going to be taking damage from something you have no idea where or how it happened, but there's not much to do, right? Because you could just like have an outline on certain things, and then you'd be more clear as to what's going on, but then you're kind of losing a lot of the immersion. So it does feel pretty bad losing a run because you just didn't see what the hell was going on. That is more so the case on certain maps than others. It's not as clear where your character model is compared to a lot of other of these games. Again, that's what comes with this kind of art style. This is also a game that I kind of wish there was a luck stat implemented in the game where some of the upgrades could be, rare, epic, that kind of stuff. I know not every survivor-like needs this, and I'm a sucker for it. I don't know how they could implement that in this game, considering that all the upgrades are just mechanical stuff, but maybe like a secondary way to just increase some stats with just random numbers. I mean, again, no, it's not necessary to have that for this game, but I just love these things, and ultimately the problem with not having that is that if you just play a particular character and with a particular god, combinations, then you're pretty much going to be saying the same thing. So that's the only thing, but there are so many different combinations to go for in the first place between the characters and the different gods out there that doesn't feel too redundant. So ultimately, this game has a lot of replayability and is overall just a really good time. So if you've liked, if you like a lot of survival likes, this one is obviously all about the visuals, and that's a really solid reason to play it. Jotunnslayer Hordes of Hel is going to be a high B tier. As of now, I'm going to put it like this. If you like this game, you should try out this game as well. Next up, we've got Keeper's Toll. Another survivor-like. This one is a very different art style, as you can see. Just like all these other games, you're just moving around, you get your dash, and things just happen automatically. Now, the difference with this one is that this takes more of an inspiration from games like Vampire Survivors, which, I mean, obviously all of them do, but I would say that one of the biggest differences from Jotunnslayer and a lot of games of this genre is that this game tries to go for more of an adventure feel by having sort of like a campaign with different quests that you have to figure out in between all these levels. You're going to be encountering some NPCs that are going to create some unique events, and then you're going to be fighting certain bosses, and you have to do certain things in order to get there. I think this is the strongest aspect of this game, is the whole discovery aspect, where you're going to be fighting different bosses depending on the quest you're going to be having, and you're going to be finding some new kind of secrets, and that's really exciting. And I think that's one of the coolest things about Vampire Survivor, which I feel like a lot of developers just have not been able to implement very well, which is the whole mystery and kind of like discovering new secrets and almost puzzles in your games. I loved that, and that was really, really exciting when I was playing this game. Once you've completed the game, I would say Keeper's Toll's replayability is much more minimalistic than other games of this genre. The roguelike elements are quite weak, I would say, in comparison, because the characters feel different from one another, drastically different, which is great, but every character just has like two build paths. You can, if you're going to be going for the monk, you're either going for punches or kicks. That's really all there is. And sometimes you can go for both at the same time. If you're playing the Blood Warrior, you can either go for polearm, what do they call it? Polearm build, or blood build. That's it. Like, each character just has two paths, and a lot of the items you're going to be finding, your classic, passive effects, there's very few, and they tend to be pretty whatever. So, yeah, the replayability is, for me, one of its weakest points, which is why this game is so fun when you first start playing it, and once you're discovering everything. It also has a very high meta progression in this game. It almost feels a little unfair how impactful that is. Your characters feel so bad with 0 upgrades, and one of the annoying things that I get, but I'm not a huge fan of, is that to get some of that meta progression, it's not just a clear currency that you can spread out between your characters, it's just experience points from the character you played, which means that if you've played a bunch of the Necromancer, your Necromancer is going to be really strong, but if you want to switch to another class, that class is gonna suck because you have 0 experience with it, which I get. You don't want to just play one character and then have everybody be strong, but on the other hand, it's a double-edged sword, right? Because I like to feel strong, but I also like to feel like I've earned getting there. So yeah, it's interesting. One aspect I really enjoy is once again, with all of these different levels, there's not that many, but with depending on the quest that you're going for, where you're at in the actual story, you're going to be encountering a lot of different enemies. They really put a lot of attention to the mobs that you're going to be facing, and yes, all of them are pretty much the same as any other random monster you're killing, but it's satisfying, and a lot of them also have like some references from a lot of the Souls games. I mean, this is just straight up, like, they even have Bonfire at the Mimic with the hands and feet from Dark Souls. they're not trying to hide it. It's actually quite funny. And while the bosses are cool because there's a lot of them, it does do the thing that I feel a lot of survivor-likes struggle with, which is they make the bosses just one big creature and that's it. And I think it's generally not great design, considering that these games are all about killing hordes of enemies, which means that a lot of your abilities are completely useless against these bosses. And that boss right there that you saw, I remember one run I had, just random abilities that just, did things like when an enemy dies, it explodes, or like things that bounce between the enemies. So it just meant that the boss took me forever, and it was just like, it just never ended because nothing was like single target focused. So I feel like anybody usually that does a survivor-like game, if you're gonna have bosses, make sure to have ads with them, because otherwise a lot of your spells are gonna be useless. It doesn't feel great, and that very much was the case for this game. Some bosses have enemies, and the ones that works, but the ones that didn't, it's a drag. The upgrades you're going to be finding as you're leveling up, they're always the same stats, the same. There's no rarity option. There's not many synergies other than just the two paths you're going for. So it's very minimalistic in that realm. So I would say once you've completed the campaign and getting there is a good time. I probably wouldn't myself continue playing just a brand new run, just see a different build, because I don't tend to see different builds. So I really like the attention they put into the whole campaign adventure feeling, but I wish they would have put a little bit more work in the actual gameplay elements to make you feel like there's a reason to do different runs with the same character on the same map, which, yeah, easier said than done. But once I've completed the game, I had a good time. The visuals and the music are really, really solid, and I love all the references. As for now, I'm going to put this as a low mid-B tier. Why haven't any roguelikes made it so that when bosses hit certain HP thresholds, it triggers on-kill effects instead? That's a good concept that I haven't seen many roguelikes do. I think that would really help these kinds of games, because, geez, every time I fight a boss and I have a bunch of like on-kill effects, it's just so annoying. Unless you have ads, which, again, I think people should really be implementing all the time. Next up, we've got Megabonk. Boy, oh boy, has this game been getting a lot of attention recently. Wow. What an interesting situation for a game. Like, if you haven't followed the community in this whole craziness with this game, it's wild, and just that by itself has been so enjoyable to follow. For those of you who don't know, there's speculation that this was actually a very well-known YouTuber trying to remain anonymous, that it was potentially his game. We don't know if that's the case, but there's a lot of evidence, and the community's trying to gather all those hints and stuff. It's super, super cool. Whether it is that person, which I forgot the creator's name, or not, it doesn't matter. How is the game? Well, this is another survivor-like. What? I know, crazy. But this is a 3D one, which you really don't see very often. Now, people have been saying that this is the reason why originally this game did so well. It's a 3D survivor-like. That's crazy. We've never seen this before. Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that's really the full reason why this has been blowing up as much as it has recently, but the 3D aspect is quite unique. I will give them that. So, this is a third-person survivor-like, where you have this whole map that you can walk around, and there's a lot of things to interact with, and the mobility is much more unique than a lot of other games of this genre, naturally, since you have the 3D element, and the game is really trying to push the limit in terms of the movement options. Like, you're going to be flying from the one edge of the map to the other by the late game, and it's absolutely crazy. And this kind of stuff, I think, is what really grabbed a lot of people's attention when you saw the crazy amount of like those oozes around. I will say that doesn't happen as much as I thought it was going to. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. You choose a character. Each character is going to be pretty different from one another. They're all going to start with one weapon. Each of these weapons you can find throughout your run, but you're always going to be starting with the same one depending on the character you're going to be playing. You can have up to 4 weapons. You can have up to 4 tomes. Now, I personally think one of the main reasons why this game is doing so well is because of how well they did the upgrade system and how many different ways you can upgrade your character and your abilities. When we were talking about Keeper's Toll, right? Keeper's Toll, you could just upgrade your spells and your ability on the level up, which just was always the same, and you had a few passive items. That's it. Here, you can find tomes, which is going to cater a particular kind of like number adjustment path. Like you can find like the tome of attack speed, a tome of movement speed, that kind of stuff. You can find specific weapons up to 4, and all of them are going to synergize, pretty well with different aspects of your build. But every time you get an upgrade for one of those weapons, it's going to be a random attribute, and that random attribute is going to have a unique rarity as well. So you can have like the common upgrade for the bow, which might just be increase the number of shots by 1, or it could be an increased movement speed, or it could be an increased range, right? But if you get a rare or a legendary, it could be 3 of those at a big number, which means that every upgrade is going to be fairly unique. And not only that, you also find items in chests. And not only that, you also find shrines, which have their own little mini game that is going to increase a specific stat. And you can also adjust that depending on the luck factor. That, to me, is why this game is doing so well. It's because builds are so enjoyable and the runs are so great because of the amount of different things you can upgrade. And with the luck stat, which I've been talking about most of the stream, which I think is really, really important for these games, at least most of these games, I think it keeps players getting constantly rewarded and seeing like a legendary upgrade that happens to upgrade the stat you were looking for that particular weapon. Those moments feel fantastic, and I think Megabonk is probably one of the best at doing that. Outside of the 3D elements, I think that to me is one of the coolest part of this game. This obviously takes heavy inspiration from Vampire Survivor and Risk of Rain 2. Now, the movement aspect is fairly unique to this game, and there's even movement tech. Like, once you get comfortable with the game, you start realizing that you can really start getting comfortable with moving and jumping in particular ways and using your slide to get momentum. There's actual like skill involved just with movement, which is awesome. The maps are filled with things between the shrines, the different chests. There's just a lot of things on the map. So you're constantly getting around the map, looking for the shrines and looking for these things while having to evade enemies that are climbing walls and falling, which that's also fantastic. Outside of the gameplay elements that are really unique and really well done, the map is also some of the best I've seen of this genre. The characters, as I said, were fairly different from one another, and they all scale every single level. I think this is something that people really enjoy, is natural scaling. Most of these characters have, every single time you level up, you gain something. And it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. These kind of effects are so satisfying. Even if they are so small that you actually don't realize that it doesn't do much, it feels great to level up and to know that every single time you level up, you gain something. Also, leveling up happens a lot, even in late game, and I like that a lot. A lot of times in Survivor likes, the early game is where you get most of your levels, but in the late game, you actually kind of like don't level up as much anymore because you're so strong. Not here. You're constantly always leveling up at roughly the same pace throughout the entire game. And actually, I think even more so in the late game, which is crazy. All the items you're going to be finding in chests are really unique. They do some crazy different mechanical stuff for the most part. And the developer gives you a chance to toggle certain items on and off, which is great. That's something that a lot of games struggle with, muddying the pool of items the more you unlock some stuff. Here you can just toggle everything you unlock on and off, which is so great. I really love that aspect. It also has this very competitive leaderboard right now where there's different metas and it's just trying to clear as many enemies as you can in one run, and those leaderboards reset every week, I think, or maybe less, something like that. And there are some YouTubers that just now have an entire channel just dedicated to showing these runs, and they do really well. So man, the community is so cool around this game. This is what I love about indie games. This game is fantastic. Also, don't get me started on the music. The music is fantastic. I love the vibe they're going for. It's ridiculous. The developer made some videos about the development of the game, which I think really helped with the promotion of the game. They did a really good job. It's really funny. You should definitely check them out if you want to see some dev vlogs. I'd like to have even more unique things happen every run. I know that's something I like, but when I first encountered the bush guy in the first level, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so cool, a unique event. But then actually it's just there every single time, and there's nothing, you're not going to find something unique every single run, which is fine. Like, you don't need that. I just love that myself. But no, overall, I don't really have much to say about this game. It's really solid. One thing to note is the game is very hard. For a survivor like, this is one of the most challenging ones I've played, which, you know, that's a pro and a con. The boss that you have to fight at the end of the tier 3 levels are really tough, which is a cool challenge. A lot of the challenge runs that you can do that are within the game, some of them are just ridiculously hard, which, yeah, that's cool. Don't feel bad if you're constantly losing your runs, because that is just part of the game. As for me, Megabonk is obviously a very solid game. Whether it's an S tier or not, this might just be out of my own personal taste. I love the game. I think it's fantastic. I don't think I could put it up there with Blueprints and Nightreign. I don't think it does not deserve the attention it's getting. I think it's awesome. I love this community. But for me, it's just going to be a very solid A tier. I understand the hype, but I think it's more so the way it's been designed than the fact that it's just a 3D vampire survivor game. I think they did a really good job, and I definitely look forward to just seeing more content, new maps, more items is always great. As it stands, it's a very solid A tier for me. That's good. Next up, we've got Monster Train 2. Monster Train is a deck building roguelike with a kind of auto battler system where you have multiple floors. You put units down, they do your bidding, and then it's a Slay the Spire like in that regard as well. Monster Train 1 was one of my favorite deck building games ever. It almost competed with the Slay the Spire for me. I absolutely loved the first game. I was quite surprised when they just kind of dropped the game kind of out of nowhere. And is it as good as the first one? Is it better? Well, boy oh boy. Let's talk about it. Gameplay-wise, again, I'm not going to get too much into it because it's pretty much just Monster Train 1. They didn't go too far to just change things. They've just added a lot of little things here and there. Some new mechanics and some quality of life changes, which I think really do benefit the game overall. You have 3 floors. You can be placing your units. You have to go through like 6 rounds of enemies, and then you fight the boss, and then you progress to the next combat. You do that about 8 times, and you get to the final boss, and that's about that. Now, one of the coolest aspects of the first game to me was the build diversity. I thought that the first game had a extremely high density of possible builds to go for, and that's thanks to the clans system. Basically, you would have, I think, 8 different clans to pick from. No, 5, I think. And each of them had 2 different champions to pick from, and each of them played very different, and you can combine 2 clans to create something unique every single run. That was awesome. And then within that, during your runs, there were so many roguelike elements that allowed you to really completely transform your deck around, with the amount of shops, events, relics. The game really felt fresh every single time. I think I played like hundreds of hours of the first one, and I absolutely loved it. The second game adds a few things. You've got equipment cards now that you can put on on your units that just buff them for the fight. They're pretty cool, pretty simple. You've got room cards. You can add an effect to an entire floor, like here, like friendly units gain valor for the entire floor. That's also cool. Nothing too crazy. I appreciate it. They also have abilities. Units can activate an ability for a one-time effect that has a cooldown. Also simple. Nothing drastic different, nothing crazy different, and I'm happy that I didn't go too far. The one thing that I really love in this game versus the first one is the deployment phase. In the first game, all your units were going to be they are in your deck, right? And so when you start a fight, you would have to find those units to place on the floor. And once you've placed them, you don't touch them anymore. Then they've decided to lower the RNG aspect by making sure that you would have a deployment phase where you draw all of your units at the beginning of every single fight. You can place them wherever you want. I love that. Now, on one end, it does make things a little too consistent, some would say, but thankfully not so much, because you're still limited with the amount of energy of units you can place on the deployment phase, and there's still so much going on that it never feels like, oh, every single fight is the same because you have the deployment phase. Not to mention that every run is so different that that's not a problem. You always have to look at what your enemies are doing, you know, like they all have different effects. There's a lot to keep track of, but I would say that the game does a very good job at making sure that you're not completely overwhelmed, mostly thanks to the difficulty scaling. This is the same as in Monster Train 1, where the game is really easy, and I would say that it's all about the Ascension scaling. I think it's, I forgot what it's called, but basically, you know, like, just like in Slay the Spire. In this game right now, I would say Ascension 7 would be like the normal difficulty, or maybe like 5 or 7, whatever. So the fact that the beginning is very easy makes it easy for people to just jump into and just have fun with the crazy deck combinations, and there are some crazy stuff you can do. Now, obviously, in this sequel, you have different clans now. I would say that overall, they're great. I think the spell-focused clan is the weakest, same as the first one. This one is even worse in my opinion. It has a very gimmicky kind of playstyle that I just don't like because it doesn't fuse as well with other clans, but it's fine. The others are really cool, and honestly, I'm really surprised and impressed with how they were able to create a bunch of new content without it making it feel like too crazy complicated, considering that all of their best ideas were naturally in the first game originally, right? Same as the first game, the visuals, the audio, the music is absolutely incredible. Love listening to the soundtrack of the first and second game, and the animation is really smooth, and it has its own style that I really enjoy. Like, if I were to just see a different unit in a different area that has nothing to do with Monster Train, I would still feel like if it was Monster Train, if it was the art of Monster Train, I could really recognize it. They added some kind of like story element to the game that I don't really care too much for. They tried to make some funny haha moments with some of the units, with some dialogue options. I don't think that was super necessary, but it's not a big deal. Once you've gone through the story, you don't get to have that happen very often anymore, so that's fine. Now, is this game as good, better, worse than the first game? Well, to answer that, I'm gonna have to get into spoiler territory, because one of the coolest things about this game is a spoiler. I know it's surprising to have spoiler for a game like this, but if you don't want to hear that, you just want to play the second game because you love the first one, I would really highly recommend skipping to this timestamp, wherever I'm gonna put it, because it'll be worth discovering that for yourself. Here we go. Originally, I thought that the game was as good as the first one, which was surprising, but then they drop on you one of the coolest things I've ever experienced in a roguelike deck building game. And they hide it. They don't even put it in the trailer naturally, because it is a big spoiler. There's a way to actually know that by looking at achievements, but they did a pretty good job hiding it, where eventually you uncover all the clans from the first game, which means you have the entirety of the first game in this sequel with all of their with all their relics, all their cards, champions, and they've even adjusted some balance stuff from the first game, which means you have even more combinations. My biggest pro on the first game was the crazy build diversity. They just doubled it out of nowhere. There's not just 5 or 6 clans, I forgot how many, which is already a massive amount. There's double that, which is crazy. Each having 2 heroes, each can be combined with any amount of, oh my gosh, it's so crazy. I think it's 180 something combinations that you can go for, and I'm trying to do all 180 for the big achievement, which I was trying to stream that, and then I just got too busy. I'm still gonna try to continue doing that because it's so fun. Effectively, I think this is just better than the first game, which makes it one of my favorite, if not my favorite deck building game ever. I love it. I think they did such a good job. I think the things they've added are good. They're not mind-blowing. The deployment phase, though, is fantastic. They've also added now a rewind button, which originally I was kind of mixed upon because you can kind of cheat it out by drawing cards, seeing if you like it, then rewind. I like the fact that it was there just in case you do a mistake. Effectively, the more you play, the more you realize you're not going to rewind every single thing. It just feels cheap and it's slow, so it's fine. There's also a restart battle option, which at high level is kind of interesting because if you do it against a really tough fight, yes, it's cheating, but this is where you start really realizing that every little bit of changing a positioning of a troop or doing a particular spell on a particular thing is actually really important. That made me realize how impactful and how mathematical and strategic this game can be was thanks to that restart battle option. Yes, it's kind of cheap and I don't do it anymore when I'm like trying to focus on like getting like a win streak, right? But it's cool that they gave you this option, considering that in the first game you could do it by just quitting out of the game and people were doing it because they don't want to lose their entire progress by a little mistake. I love the first one and I think this game is better. So if you like the first one, definitely play that. If you like kind of like an auto battle system, try out Monster Train. I don't think it's crazy complicated. Even in this sequel, yes, there are other keywords that you have to pay attention to, but I think the game does a pretty good job at explaining things fairly well. The balancing is pretty good. I still think there are some things here and there that I would tweak, but I think they are going to tweak. Actually, I think they just announced their DLC, so I cannot wait to see that. Currently, the Pyre of Dominion is a little too overpowered in my opinion, but it's cool that you can choose a unique pyre, which is something you couldn't do on the first game. It's another layer of customization that you can do over the clans that are given to you. They also have a really cool community challenge tab where you can just play unique kind of challenge runs. For this game, I don't care myself too much about it, so Monster Train is an easy S tier. I'm gonna put this as my top of S tiers. I mean, I'm gonna have to think about where it stands in in terms of my favorite roguelikes of all time. I know it's not gonna be an S tier for everyone, but to me, I do look forward to having more diversity in terms of the bosses and just more content in terms of, yeah, what you're gonna be facing. But even so, man, every single run is unique when I play this game. So cool. And I've been playing the second one for many hours. Easy S tier. Next up, we've got Sephiria. I think that's how you say it. This is another dungeon crawler top-down action roguelike by the developers of Dungreed. Now, if you don't know Dungreed was a hidden gem that is honestly one of the best 2D action dungeon crawler games out there. In my opinion, but for some reason, not many people knew about it, in my opinion. I loved the original. So they made another game. Once again, not many people know about it. It's currently in early access, and man, this is a great game. The gameplay is fairly standard for this kind of game. Similar to Dungreed, you can choose different characters that have, you know, slight little stats here and there, but it's more about the weapons you're going to be picking here. You have your sword, you have your dagger, you have now your crossbow. They just added a update fairly recently, and the one thing I really liked about Dungreed as well is during their early access, it really did feel like every new update, it was just enhancing the story and the plot and the adventure. This is a game that really has a fantastic adventure feeling to it, while also constantly giving you more things to play with. So right now, yeah, you got new weapons to play with, new items to find, new characters, and more story. I really like the story. I really like this whole adventure feeling. Like, without spoiling anything, on this new update, I found this little like side quest in the hub, and I had to go in a basement, and things got really creepy. And though it was like it was like almost a horror feel. I was like, what the hell? I love these things. I mean, I'm a sucker for this kind of stuff. Like, it really immerses me in these kinds of games. And I think just like Dungreed, they did a really good job with this. Now, as you can see, one of the big unique aspects to this game is that it's also an inventory management game. Now, there's a few of them out there. Basically, you actually don't really level up your character by just giving it stat. You're just going to be giving more and more items to your inventory, and your placement within the inventory is going to make you stronger. You're going to find either items or artifacts, I think they're called. And basically, artifacts are things you put in your inventory that's going to give like +3 levels to one of those items if placed correctly. So you can see there's a bunch of numbers here. Those are all the different artifacts that buff your inventory. So you have to have a good balance of artifacts to buff your items and your items. And if you get your certain items to level 6, for instance, they do drastically different things. So it has a lot of cool strategic elements. You really have to be thinking a lot about where to put things, what you can get, the balance of items and artifacts. Not only that, but the gameplay is also very enjoyable. Each weapons feel very different. You've got special ability, you've got a dash attack ability, you get your dash, you've got your normal attacks that have a combo. So just by itself, the gameplay is very satisfying and enjoyable, more so than it was in Dungreed, I would say. Every run is going to be pretty different, and there's a lot to do and a lot of elements to what makes a run unique. Just like in Dungreed, there's also a roguelite element where not only are you unlocking permanent, things in your hub and stuff, but you're also giving yourself some permanent stats, kind of like the mirror in Hades, but here you're constantly changing that mirror every single run because there's just a bunch of different mirrors to upgrade. You can do like the crit mirror, which if you put 20 points into it, you get a special thing about crits. You can do the movement speed one, which gives you movement speed, but if you get to level 20, you also get this, the attack speed, the magic one, the luck one. And so there's already a lot of customization pre-run that really allows great replayability from the start. Not only that, they just added in recent update the pool of something, which allows you to start with an item. And depending on which upgrade you're going for, you can also have like a really powerful one. That's really cool. I love that. Considering that you're always going through the same biomes and there's not many secrets throughout the run, I think it's pretty important to have a lot of customization pre-run if you're going to be facing the same meaty bosses and bosses. That being said, that doesn't mean that everything is always the same. I think there's 2 boss variation per biome, and I think 2 mini boss variation per biome, and if not, I think that's what they're planning on going for. It doesn't get really tiring, honestly. They still have not given us the true final boss, just like they did in Dungreed's early access. I do hope they're going to be giving us more secrets like they did in Dungreed, without getting into spoilers for that game, but there were like some other biomes you could find, and there was a lot of ways to get to the true ending, which was really cool. There's a difficulty system as well, like a heat system, and you actually get rewarded with permanent progression for doing them, which is not always the case. So if you really want to take it to the next level, you can play at like heat 25. Right now I think I'm trying to do like heat 30. I'm saying heat because that's the Hades one, right? But you know what I'm saying, right? So I'm trying to get to 30. It's really hard, but I actually get permanent progression, which is great. Oh, also, this is a multiplayer game, I think, which I was quite surprised. I have not touched on the multiplayer aspect, but I would imagine it being very fun. I can't comment on the balance of it all, but that's cool. I might have to try it out with a good friend of mine. Now, that being said, while it's still in early access, I do think there are a few elements that they could improve on. Currently, it does feel like the elemental builds are really strong compared to anything else you can do. So, if you're going for a fire build, you're going to go look for all the fire items. With the cool, intricate inventory system, there's still a lot of things you can play with. But overall, I feel like, once you're going for the fire stuff, you just go to grab the fire stuff. You're going for lightning stuff, you're going for lightning stuff. And they're really powerful. I kind of wish that there'll be more ways to blend certain elemental things together. Because, for instance, if you were to go for like a more melee attack focused build, then there's a lot of different items you can go for, right? Maybe you want more attack speed, maybe you want more damage. While for elemental stuff, it doesn't matter what it is, you just want elemental stuff, right? So I feel like that on that realm, they could adjust certain things here and there in terms of the balance and making some items more flexible. One of the mirror paths, again, I forgot how to call them, but like the thing you can start with is that your inventory is smaller, but you can imprint the tablets, they're actually called tablets, into your inventory instead of taking a spot. I loved that mechanic, and I kind of wish that was actually a core mechanic within the game. They would have to adjust things here and there, but I like that so much, but I don't want to always go for that particular build. So I kind of wish there was, a system to just every now and then just imprint a tablet in your inventory just to make it permanent. I think that'd be cool. And also currently they have like a mana system where you can use certain spells. I personally haven't found spells to be super impactful or necessary, and I don't love the whole like mana system currently. maybe it's just because I haven't tried it enough, but every time I try, I just feel so much weaker than the elemental build. And maybe just because I think the elemental builds are just too strong in comparison. But yeah, there's still a few tweaks here and there that I would do. But as it stands, this is another absolute hidden gem, and I really hope that it's not gonna be the same as Dungreed, where the people that know about the game say it's a fantastic game, but for some reason it doesn't get as much recognition as I think it should be. So I think I'm gonna put this as like a high A tier, and it could easily be an S tier if they really tweak some of the stuff that I have issues with, and with more content. But as it stands, man, I mean, this is different than Dungreed in some ways, but it's potentially as good, and also, again, killer music. So yeah, screw it. I love this game, and I need this game to get more attention. It's getting the highest of A tiers. Go play this game. It's great. It's really cool. Next up, we've got Shapeshifter Formation. This is another survivor-like game. This one was sent to the channel, and I had to feature it on this tier list because I've played the hell out of this game. In this game, you're playing as a little ship in this kind of like neon art style, similar to Nova Drift in that regard, but the gameplay is quite different. You have a dash. Here you actually are aiming your one ability, your one weapon, so you don't have multiple weapons, and you have an ultimate ability depending on the ship that you're playing. So there's a lot of things already from the core gameplay aspect compared to a lot of the other of these games. There's also a multiplayer aspect. I have not played that myself, but I might want to. Solo is really solid in any case. This is one of those survivor likes where honestly visually the gameplay gets really chaotic, which is super satisfying, and thanks to the neon aspect, it gets even crazier. And that's what got my attention originally, just like, ooh, cool, like a neon survivor like. Sign me up. What really surprised me in this game is actually the content. This game has an absurd amount of content in all the builds that you can do. There are a ton of different ships to pick from. Like, I think it feels like there's like 20. There's like 15 different weapons to choose from. You can then get rid of a particular tag that you're not going to encounter. You can prioritize a particular tag, and then every single time you level up, you're going to be given 4 things to choose from. All of these can be altered, banished, skipped, rerolled, duplicated. There are so many choices every single time you level up that I've never seen that from any other game. Like, there's so many. Look at all these things you saw down there. You can do so much every time you level up. It's so satisfying. There's also the glitch system where you might get a upgrade twice. It's been one of the most satisfying survivor likes when I level up. It always feels exciting. And all these things that you can, banish, reroll, they're really well designed. Most of them are not number adjustments. A lot of them are mechanical, and there are so many builds to go for. And a lot of these different builds can synergize with everything else. Like, you could go for a corrosion build, which synergizes with lightning, and lightning can synergize with fire. Fire can synergize with this, and then this can synergize with that. Everything feels intertwined. And it's so cool. There's a different rarity system. There's no luck stat, I think, which I find surprising. I do feel like this game could benefit from a luck stat. Nevertheless, there's a lot of different upgrades you can find, and you can unlock a lot of them through different achievements, which I always love that, because it gives you something to look forward to going forward. There's also a lot of different different levels with unique bosses. You're going to unlock a lot of these. There's so much to unlock, and then there's all these skill trees, which originally is just the skill tree will unlock some permanent massive stuff. We're talking 30% damage, stuff like that, but also like now you can find new things in the shop, like new mechanics in the shop. Like, once you've unlocked everything, your shop is filled with different things to interact with, which is awesome because it gives a lot of player choices, which I'm an advocate for in these kind of games. So once you've unlocked all this, you're like, wow, now this game really opens up. But that's not it. There's another skill tree that's the Paragon. So there you go. You have the skill tree, the Paragon, are all those are your basic little number adjustments, which you only unlock later, which is kind of weird, and I kind of wish you would unlock a little earlier. But the original skill tree gives you all the mechanical changes. You get the Paragon, and then you've got the... I forgot what it's called, the last one, which is like the ultimate skill tree, where you can only unlock one thing every time you beat the true final boss in a particular thing, or I forgot exactly how that happens. That allows you to unlock a truly legendary upgrade that you're only gonna find once every like 4 runs. And when you find it, it is so impactful and so cool and fun. We're talking like your on-kill effects now trigger randomly every few seconds, or double the chances of on-hit effects happening. Oh my gosh, when you find one of those abilities, it feels so cool. Artifacts, there you go, artifacts. I am blown away by this game, honestly. I was just having a little bit of fun with it when I first played it, because again, for the series, I just have a few hours to play it and I give my first impressions. But the more I played it, the more it just opened up more and more and more things to play with and to discover. And the fact that it has a co-op mode as well, my gosh, this is one of my favorite survivor-like games ever. And I don't think many people know about it. I do think it takes a little bit to get going, because you do need to unlock a lot of these things to really feel like you have a lot of like build potential. But now that I've unlocked most of this game's abilities, guns, and ships, I don't think I've seen a survivor-like with that much build customization from the start, and with that many unique builds every time I play. It's so fun. So yeah, I love it. Now that being said, there are still a few things here and there that I think could be tweaked. I do think some bosses are way harder than others. Some bosses don't have ads. I can't believe they designed some of those bosses without ads. Again, like for a game that's so well designed and it's like upgrades. Oh my gosh, the fact that it has a bunch of like on-kill effects and bounces and everything is so sad that some bosses don't have ads. I really think they should add some just random mobs, because it's just so much more synergetic with certain things. And yeah, some balanced stuff here and there, but overall, I mean, it's really also very satisfying. You feel like you have a lot of control over your character, over your ship, and being able to evade things barely is a very satisfying feeling. So this might be a surprise to some, but this game just took me by surprise, and this might be an S tier game for me. Maybe the highest A tiers. Gosh, it just came out of nowhere. I was so surprised, but yeah, I sank so many hours into this game, and I did not expect that from this game. So the game is fantastic. So yeah, if you like these kinds of games, check this one out. It's another hidden gem. Next up, we've got the Spell Brigade. That's right, another survivor-like. Woo! Similarly, top-down. Well, here it's all about the spells that you're going to be finding every few levels and upgrading those spells. That's about that. The gameplay is extremely minimalistic. You're just moving around. That's it. I actually kind of like survivor-likes that just have movement as their only option, because it's I don't know, it's kind of like a ballsy move. Because you better make sure that the game that you know, everything else is satisfying enough if you're going to just have movement. And this game is currently in early access. There's a roadmap, and they seem to be wanting to add a lot of stuff, so that's something to keep in mind. But as it stands, I've also played this in multiplayer. So I played it in single and multiplayer. You've got a few maps to choose from. This is always going to be the same map. Honestly, I do feel like the maps can get a little repetitive, even though there's 4 of them. I kind of wish there were more things to do on the map, but that's something that I'll be touching on a little bit more later when I talk about the relics in this game. But it's still very enjoyable, mostly thanks to the spell stuff. So, okay. You have different characters to start off with. Each character is going to start with one specific spell and a few unique stats. The unique stats, I'll say right now, are pretty minimalistic. Like, all the characters don't feel drastically different from one another. It's mostly just the spell stuff. I kind of wish there would be even more to do with the characters, but as it stands, they're okay. But the spells are fun. Every time you level up, you're going to be upgrading either a spell or just a stat for your character. That's it. Nothing else. Each of these upgrades is going to have different numbers depending on the luck, which again, as I said, I love that kind of stuff. And if you go for a spell, once you get enough levels to a spell, you can then add an element to that. So like a fire or lightning or freezing or dark stuff. And that's where things get really fun and unique, because, you know, you can go, your boomerang that has a lot of attack speed can now be a lightning boomerang, which now goes towards everybody. And then once you've upgraded that even more, you can be lightning and fire. So now it bounces off to everybody and puts fire elements to everybody else. And you're like, now we're getting somewhere. And visually, all the spells are going to have a unique looking thing depending on the elements, which is super cool because it can be any combination of these elements. It can be frost fire, it can be lightning acid. So there's a lot of possibilities for each of your spells. That's when things get really chaotic and really fun. I do hope they're going to be adding more and more elements because currently there's not that many. I understand it's a lot of work considering they've put a lot into, the visuals and the fact that you can combine every element. So any additional element is going to be a lot of work to design, right? But I hope they're going to add even more because I love it. Currently, I do think that they could have even more spells. There's a good number of them, but I hope they're going to be enough to keep the game fresh for a long time, because currently in its early access I want more content, and I think that's what the game needs the most currently, is just more spells, more elements, and more relics. So speaking of relics, you're going to be finding some stuff around the map, little chests. These are going to be the only source of mechanical upgrades. So we're talking, now every time you're low on health, you gain more XP. Or if you stay still, you deal more damage. Or every time you don't use a reroll, you increase your luck. These kind of things are going to be in chests. Personally, I think the chests are kind of weirdly designed. A lot of them are small and specific and whatever. And the chests are, in single player, super annoying to find. There's currently a character that allows you to always have it marked on your map. I kind of wish that was just by default, especially in single player, because there's no real reason to go around the map, because if you do that, you're going to lose a lot of experience points because you're trying to grab the experience points. So I don't like the way that system works in single player. Another thing that you're going to be doing during the run is you're going to be encountering some little mini quests. Again, a lot of these games are starting to do that, which I think is a good thing. So, now you have to chase this golden bug, or now you have to put these there you go, the golden crab, or you have to complete the sacrifice, or you have to seal the rift and retrieve the fungus. There you go. Thank you for showing what I'm trying to talk about. They're cool. I will say currently they feel pretty unbalanced. Some are extremely easy to do, while some are close to impossible depending on certain situations, especially once again in single player mode. Currently the game does need a little bit more content personally, and some balanced stuff here and there. Some spells feel way weaker than others, not just by numbers but visually. That's why I'm hopeful for this early access. Because I do think, especially with the roadmap they showed, that this game looks very promising. But as it stands, it's a very, very satisfying and enjoyable survivor-like. And I think the coolest part about this game is the mobility aspect. I think mobility is super, super important for these games, considering it's very minimalistic. And even though there's just walking around, you are being able, the fact that monsters move very slowly means that you can just ever so slightly just move around them. And I think the game even has kind of like a hidden mechanic where enemies slow down a little bit when they're close to you, so it makes you feel even more badass when you're just kind of going in between the enemies and look, did you see how close he was to getting hit by that little bullet? It's so satisfying. The only game that I've ever had that much satisfaction in terms of its movement in these kinds of games was Potato. And I think this game is close, maybe even better than Potato in that realm, which is surprising for a 3D looking game. The multiplayer aspect is really fun. I definitely think that the game is primarily designed around that foremost. It is fun that your spells, has friendly fire. It's a little weird. Sometimes you don't know if some are and some are not. It's not very clear. And also in terms of player feedback, it's hard to know if something is dealing a lot of damage or if something is doing a small amount of damage. And that's pretty important considering that sometimes you do want to play with a controller and it's going to rumble on your controller, whether you're taking 2 damage or 150. So sometimes that can be a little dangerous. Another aspect I love is that they have these enemies that explode and create an explosion chain. That might seem like a small thing, but I actually think it's kind of core to the game because it allows people that are behind to catch up by just making sure that if you just have a chain reaction of these enemies, you don't need to be having a strong build because you can just kind of like bait these creatures to explode and still get a lot of XP. I love that. That's a really cool catch-up mechanic that I don't see many games do. There's also a cool revive system, so if you just do a mistake and you die, you still get a certain amount of revives, even in single player, which is great. In multiplayer, you have a lot more revives, but you're constantly dying. So it's kind of fun because you're constantly getting overwhelmed by enemies, but it's not overwhelming in a way where you can't see anything because it's slow. Back to some balancing stuff. There's also some stuff about the final boss. Currently, there's only 2 final bosses. I really hope they add a lot more. They might have had the 3rd one since their most recent update. In any case, one of them is way easier than the other. I did see they nerfed it a little bit, but not enough in my opinion. The fact that you get to choose a 4th spell later down the run feels a little unnecessary to me. I kind of wish they would have just a choice as to how many spells you want to have during a run. Yes, there is a game mode that allows you to just have 1 spell, but I kind of wish there wasn't in between. I kind of wish I could just choose to have either 2 or 3 spells because effectively the last spell is actually worse. It's not a good thing to have because since you're mostly upgrading your spells, you're not upgrading your character that much. So that 4th spell is just kind of useless and then just muddies the pool of all your other future upgrades. Same goes for rerolls. I wish there was more rerolling to do by using your health maybe. Yeah, there's a lot of things that I think could be tweaked in this game, but as it stands, I think in its core, the game is really, really solid. And the fact that it has a meta progression system that's pretty straightforward, pretty standard, you know, just get more, you get currency, you upgrade certain stats, does keep players wanting to continue playing. I think. At least it did for me. And also being able to unlock a lot of different characters, even though they're not drastically different, they're still quite enjoyable to see the differences. And I've been having a blast in multiplayer. So yeah, I would say if you like Survivor likes, definitely keep an eye on this one. And if you're looking for one to play with friends, this might be one of the most fun ones because they really designed the game with that in mind. Foremost, I would say. Currently, in its early access, is going to be a low A tier. So many A tiers. That's good. This could definitely climb up the ranks once they've added more and more content and just balance tweaks here and there. Next up, we've got Star Renegades. Taking a little break from our Survivor likes here for a second. This is a strategy RPG roguelike where you play as a team of adventurers in this futuristic realm, taking down some robots and some bad people to save the world, I think? Your timeline? Something like that. Now, I've been hearing a lot about this game, and I was definitely looking forward to trying this one out because, well, there's not that many turn-based RPG roguelikes anymore, even though that's where, the genre kind of started. And as a fan of Darkest Dungeon, I was definitely excited to check this one out. And yes, I do think this game takes a lot of inspiration from Darkest Dungeon. The gameplay is rather complicated. You can have up to 5 characters. Everybody takes their own turn. There is a whole time system where you're on a time bar and like you can see when enemies are going to be attacking, and you have to pretty much make sure that you're before a particular enemy and you have to push them further on the bar to do some crits. There's a lot going on in this game. At its core, it's quite satisfying. It's quite enjoyable. It's fairly strategic. I will say this game can be quite overwhelming to start off with. And I think this is where a lot of people unfortunately struggle with, is the way that the game gives you information is not super clear to me. And I think one of this game's weakest points is the UI. I hate this game's UI so much. Oh my goodness. I've rarely had this problem, but I've played it on my Steam Deck and on the computer, and I just hate it on both ends. You don't have an inventory, you don't have a tab for an inventory. You have to press escape to go to your characters to look at your inventory. Like, why? Things are not very clear when you want to look at like enemies' intentions. There's no like button to see where everything's going to be attacked, where you have to click a particular character to see if they're going to be taking damage on this turn. It's a mess. I think this is this game's biggest issue. This game is very messy, at least to me, and I think to most people that start playing the game, which is a shame, because my understanding is that this game gets really, really cool the more you play, because it's a game that requires a lot of time and dedication. I've played, I think, about 10 hours. And in my 10 hours, I'm still pretty confused by a lot of stuff. I still don't understand why certain attacks are automatic and others are not. It has a very solid story. They put a lot of attention to the characters. And again, they take a lot of inspiration from Darkest Dungeon, where you're going to be having different characters that all have their different kind of like movesets. You could have like relationship stuff when you go to, you know, at the end of the day, you're gonna go to your camp and you're gonna create different relationships with different cards, blah, blah, blah. It's very similar in that regard. The gameplay, I think, is more complicated than Darkest Dungeon, whether that's a good or a bad thing. One thing I will say is the art style and the animations are super solid. As you can see, I mean, there's a lot of effort and work put into it. Each enemy will have their own animations depending on the attacks. So do your characters. It feels great to attack. It kind of reminds me of some Final Fantasy games in that regard. It's super cool. And I just love seeing all the different characters that play quite drastically differently. Now, the characters are not going to have any roguelike stuff attributed to them. They always level at the same thing, I think. But considering that you can have a lot of different combinations in your party, and considering that you're going to be encountering some different items that are going to have roguelike elements to them throughout your runs, yeah, the runs do feel quite different every time. But the run itself can sometimes be very long if you get a little unlucky and you're not very strong, but you don't die very quickly. Some bosses, some fights can take many turns, and you're just kind of doing the same loop over and over again of doing the same abilities, because ultimately you don't have that many attacks to play around with from what I'm seeing, unless you get to the late game of a run. But the early game of the run, even though yes, you can have different party members, man, starting a new run feels still a little bit of a drag to me. So it's a shame, because I really do think that if they made the UI much better, the information much clearer, I think this game would be much better to me, and I think to a lot of other people. I did check some reviews. I usually don't want to do that when I do my own review, but I did want to double check some stuff because I was kind of unsure about how things worked, and it does seem like the biggest complaint is just people just didn't understand how things worked. It's a shame. So if they were to just completely revamp the entire UI, I think this game would be really cool. Now, if you stick to it, and if you don't struggle with the way that they present information and the different menus and stuff like that, then I do think this game has a lot to offer. And if you enjoy these kinds of tactical, like turn-based games, I could imagine this one being really solid. And I have gotten this game recommended to me a lot of times, so I do know people really love this one. Like, sometimes I don't even know if some of my characters, if I selected their turns yet or not, and sometimes, therefore, I'm going to do an ability, and oh, oops, that was the last character, so now all the turns are happening at the same time, even though I didn't want to. I wanted to double check something, and oh my gosh, it's just such a mess. And like, even getting information about a monster, you have to press a particular button, then click on the enemy instead of just hovering, which might seem like a small thing, but man, these things really do rack up. Like, when you have all these little things here and there that are just terrible quality of life things, gosh, it gets so frustrating. Maybe I'm being too harsh in that regard. To me, these are pretty important things. So it's a shame. I'm not going to just abandon this game. I'm definitely going to play some more once I've given myself a little break. I've played a few hours. As it stands, it's a pretty solid strategy game, but I do wish things were designed differently. So right now, I'm going to put this as a mid-B tier, which I know is going to disappoint a lot of people, but that's just my thoughts. The timeline mechanic looks pretty cool. It is, and effectively, you know, that's one of the most unique parts of it, and there's a lot of strategy linked to that, which I really do appreciate. Next up, we've got Sworn. Sworn is a Hades-like. That's really what it is. It's just Hades. It doesn't even try to hide it. The music is similar, the way the animations work, the gods, it's so freaking similar. But what does it do different then? Well, first of all, it's a multiplayer-focused Hades-like, which obviously Hades doesn't have, and that's really cool. I actually have not gotten to play this in multiplayer, so I'm willing to bet that I'm missing out on a lot of what the developers intended. But that being said, as its own game in solo player, there's still a lot of unique stuff they're doing. First off, you're not just playing one character with a bunch of different weapons. You're playing 4 possible characters with 4 possible weapons each, with 4 possible spells each, with multiple things you can flip for different variations. Yeah, there's a lot of customization in terms of what you want to play before starting a run, which is awesome. Hades also does a lot in that realm, but this one, yeah, honestly, even more so, which makes sense considering it's multiplayer. You want to make sure not everybody has the same loadout, right? So that's really cool, and I really respect that. This game also has a different kind of mirror system, the meta progression in that regard, where there's a lot of different skill trees, and each for different realms, right? You got the support tree, you've got the god tree, you've got the defense, offense tree, all these things, and you just have to put money into it. Some of the big ones you can flip into 2 different versions. I kind of wish there was more things that you can change around. But overall, yeah, this game is pretty heavy in its roguelite element, even more so than Hades, I would say. Now, this game was in early access when I last talked about it and is now fully released. And I will say, not a lot has changed on my thoughts. I was a little bit disappointed with its full release, I would say. They didn't really add too much, in my opinion, but it's still very enjoyable. I mean, here's the thing, right? Doing a survivor-like game is not super complicated. It's pretty easy to do. Doing a good one is different, right? But just developing one is fine. But doing a Hades-like, that requires a lot of work. So even though it pretty much is a copy-paste of Hades in a lot of different aspects, it does it really well. So it almost feels like kind of like almost a spin-off, right, of Hades in some ways, which I appreciate. I mean, I've been having a really good time with it. The bosses are really cool, although they're always the same, so I kind of was hoping they were going to add variations to that. The true final boss and the final boss are really, really well designed. They actually are showing the final boss here, which is surprising. Again, similar to Hades, they have the same, like, even like when they go to the final phase, there's a guitar solo exactly like in Hades. Like, come on. All the different weapons feel pretty good. The different spell options, the different boons. Yeah, I mean, even though a lot of them are very similar to Hades, they're very enjoyable. They did a really good job with making sure that things feel good. And there's a lot of different paths to different builds. One thing I'll say though is the roguelite progression. Yes, you're going to be pretty weak at the beginning, and that's normal. But then once you get strong and you want to unlock a new weapon, if you don't have a way to upgrade that weapon, which yes, is another branch of meta progression that you have to do right there, right? If you don't unlock those things, your weapon might be terrible. Some weapons really need some of these upgrades. I kind of wish they toned it down a little bit because, gosh. Also, the actual story element, they actually added some more voice acting for their full release, which is cool. But compared to Hades, I personally don't care as much. I'm just not as invested. That might just be me. I mean, it's hard to top Hades in a lot of these stuff. But I do like the art style. That art style is fairly different than Hades in that, at least. And the music is good. It just feels like they were just listening to Hades and just trying to find a way to do the same thing, right? So not too sure what else to say. Yeah, the full release might have been, I was hoping for a little bit more, but the game already had so much in its early access. I think they did tone down some of the issues I had. Some balancing things were tweaked, and I think for the better. Oh yeah, I do want to mention that there's still some bugs and some just boons that just are not working properly in my experience. I've tried a few things and I saw the numbers, and numbers just didn't actually work or change. And I even had a visual bug where there was like a text that was on my screen while I was fighting something. And it was like, please get this out of my screen. And then when I beat it, it revealed itself. It was just kind of like in the background. It was like, really? So, I mean, hopefully they continue doing some updates here and there to just fix some issues. Even though it might not be super unique, it's hard to make these games, and I respect them for doing so. So this is going to be a solid A tier. Yeah, next up. We've got the Royal Writ, I think is how you call it. This is a deck building board-centric game. You're gonna have some cards that you're gonna put on the board, and they're gonna continuously move up and up until they get to the very end. And as they go up, you rack up some points through a very unique scoring system. Now, this might be surprising, but This is a Roguelike. That's really where things get pretty unique. Because the way that the scoring works is that each unit can either have addition or multiplier. And as you can see right there, the blue is addition, the red is multiplier. You know, just like Berlatro. Some units, you're just going to increase those numbers up, depending on certain aspects, and the further along you go on the map, the more you're going to add some points, or even multiply your card's effect. So you can imagine things getting pretty crazy. Now, if that sounds a little confusing and complicated, that's because it kind of is. This is not an easy game to just pick up and just play casually like Balatro, because this game has a lot of mechanics, a lot of things to understand and to get used to. I'm not going to talk about all of them, but, you know, status effects will stay permanently on your cards. Your cards will die. You have to find new things to replace as you're going through the run. There's a bunch of keywords that you have to understand and get used to. You got some temporary cards, some permanent cards, some base stats, temporary stats. Even after I've played this game quite a lot, there are still some things that happen and I don't know why. I do wish that there was more tutorial, more information given to players outside of just having to hover over something and that's it. When you get a really good build going, it's really cool. There's a lot of different ways to get those builds going, considering that every card have their own unique effect to, you know, increase their base number. And you have to make sure you have some reds and blue units to really multiply those effects. So just even from that alone can create some really, really interesting runs every single time. The build diversity is really, really extensive. And I've had completely different runs every single time I played, which is great. Also, the visuals are really unique, really fun. They have some really cool cutscenes in this game. Really cute and fun. They put some good amount of attention to the backstory, which is great. Heck, there's even some spoiler stuff that I can't talk about that they've really made sure to try to hide, which is awesome. Like, I did not expect that. Now, in terms of the run itself, there's a lot of different things to find throughout the map. You've got some betting stuff. You got a wheel that you can move around. You've got some shopkeepers with some unique traits. You've got a tinkering thing to completely change a card and even change its like multiplicative to additional instead of vice versa. You can give teeth, you get additional effects. It's really cool, and you can see there's a lot of different paths to go for, and I like games that do that, like deck building games that actually put a lot of effort outside of the gameplay as well, because I think the player option is fairly important for games like these days, I would say. Otherwise, things get a little repetitive. Gameplay is really unique and very fun once you understand everything. Randomly dying to something you didn't understand or you didn't fully conceptualize definitely doesn't feel great. Once you get past that and once you really start understanding a lot of stuff, it is really satisfying. Some cards can get a little too niche at times, I would say, especially in the later runs. A lot of times I'll be like, they'll be showing me a bunch of different cards I can add, and I realize like none of them work for what I'm trying to go for because they just have too many specific things. So sometimes that can be a little frustrating, but overall there's still a lot of ways to just create your own run and to customize your deck very easily thanks to the amount of things you can encounter on the map. And the bosses all also have unique mechanics that you can always be aware of prior to getting there. So you can always look at the top right there, the little eye up there that tells you what boss you're going to be facing, and you have to adjust to their mechanics. I like that. It's really cool. But yeah, even though this game is can be a little complicated, and I wish they did information a little differently. If you liked Balatro, if you like a more complicated strategy deck building game with a really unique vibe and kind of gameplay, yeah, this game is good. This game is really solid. A game I would recommend to people that have played a lot of deck building games and have played Roguelikes, which, yes, I guess now it's kind of a subgenre. As it stands, this is going to be a very high B tier, thanks to its unique gameplay that I really haven't seen a lot of games doing, and its awesome vibe, audio, visuals. So yeah, check this one out. Next up, we've got an interesting one. This is Void Crew. Void Crew is a first-person spaceship management roguelike? This game really does prioritize multiplayer. I do have to bring this up first because I actually did start playing this in multiplayer before doing it in single player. And I'm gonna be honest, clearly the multiplayer is much better designed than the single player experience. But I did play both, so let's talk about it. The gameplay is you're playing as one crew member on a spaceship. That spaceship is going to go from sector to sector, and each sector you're going to have a particular mission that you have to do. Once you're done with that mission, you go to the next sector, and rinse and repeat. Every single time you do that, you gain more items and things to interact with to upgrade your ship. Now, in terms of a roguelike, your character does not get better. You do not upgrade your character whatsoever from the beginning to the end of the run. You do get meta progression. You do upgrade your player's stats and abilities through meta progression, but it's not crazy extensive. And it's just small amounts of numbers here and there that you can shift around however you want. No, instead, throughout the runs, you're going to be finding new modules to put onto your guns that spaceship has, relics that actually give you like passive abilities for your ship, new kinds of guns, new things to install on your ship that I forgot the name of. It's all just constantly upgrading your ship. So in multiplayer, you're going to have someone who's going to be mostly your pilot. You're going to have someone who's going to be mostly handling the shooting. You're going to be someone that's mostly handling engineering, which means fixing your ship when you get hit by stuff. And then someone who's mostly going to be going out to do some stuff in space. And it's cool. You all have your own roles. I will say some roles feel way less important than others, and the game kind of makes you feel like they're all equally important, but not really. And if you like messing around with your teammates, let me tell you, you can really easily mess around with your friends on this one. My goodness, the amount of laughs we've had by having the pilot like start the hyperspeed, I forgot how you call it, and then people were not sitting down, and then you just instantly die. I mean, this kind of things are really fun. This game obviously thought about these things, and I think it's part of the real fun about it. But the roguelike elements obviously are going to be a major part. So every run, you're going to start with a ship. You can't customize the ship that much in my experience. I haven't played like a crazy amount of hours, to be honest, but from what I've played, there's not that much customization, especially early on. But that's okay, because at its core, there's a lot to do. The missions are going to feel fairly different from one another. One mission is going to be much more battle-focused, another one's going to be much more exploration-focused, another one's going to be much more, like defending other ships-focused. And there's different biomes, and it looks and feels really cool. Obviously, as you can see, it's a beautiful game. And you can customize your character with loot boxes, which again, there's no microtransactions, so it's not a big deal. But it's funny that, you get, new suits, new little headgear that are just purely visual stuff, but I guess it's pretty important considering you're doing multiplayer. It's a fun time. Honestly, I had a really, really good time with my friends. That being said, I do think this game does have quite a few issues that I hope they do fix. First off, a lot of things are really confusing in this game. Information is not very clear. Like, for instance, you're gonna get like a relic that says all your installments on the starboard part do this, but all your installation on the port stuff do this. I still have no idea where I could find that information, what the starboard and the port thing is. If that is someone that everybody is aware of about spaceships, then oops. But the fact that it's not given to me in the game is really weird. Here's a good example, okay? So that whole like starboard port thing was a relic that said that anything that's on one side of the ship uses 2 less energy, but ones on this side use +1 energy. Got it. First of all, I did not know which side was which, so I had to look it up. Then I started putting things on there, and it takes a while to install. And it's part of the game. It's slow, right? Because you don't want things to be automated, because the whole point is that you have to fix things. So I had to put things. I had to wait for it to be installed. Then it got installed, and then I looked at it, and it didn't work. My gun still used more energy than it said it would. I was like, huh? Okay, so I uninstalled it, I put it back on the other side. I had to wait. Took me like a solid 2 minutes, maybe. And then once everything was back together, I looked and it still didn't work. So I brought it back, and then I looked it up, and then apparently, actually, it can't go under 0. I mean, under 1. It has to be at least 1 energy, which You wouldn't know unless you tried it. And for a game like this, that's so slow paced, when you get something that just, it just doesn't work because that's how the game is, it's quite frustrating. That was really annoying. So these kind of things I think you're going to be encountering fairly often at first. And I would imagine that the more you play this game and the more things are clear, the more fun it's going to be. The thing is, in multiplayer, I don't think it's much of a big deal because in multiplayer, it's just a mess. Who cares, right? Like, things happen, like, oh, why is this doing this? Or why is this? I mean, at least in my experience with the friends I've been playing, like, it's just a mess and we love it. But when I was playing in single player, trying to really understand everything was much less enjoyable to me, at least. There's also a lot of janky clipping, you know, like your character model kind of like goes through walls a little bit here and there. Certain relics, which are, you know, like your passive things you can give your ship, are just so underwhelming. Like, again, like, your weapons deal a little bit more damage, but have a little bit less fire rate. And these relics are really rare, and you only get like 1 or 2 per run sometimes. And it's like, cool. I wish they would do a little bit more with them. Not to mention that, again, like, I have a module that I put on one of my gun that give +1 fire rate, but then when I look at the stats, it's not +1, it's +0.3. Okay, got it. It's like it transferred because of like the way that the gun worked, and they already had an internal stat. I get it, but it's just confusing, and I don't get much of the information in this game. And if you go in like the help tab on the menu, there's a lot of information there, a ton of tabs, to the point where I wish I could just search, like, give me a search option, because there are so many tabs, and sometimes I'm looking for a particular word and I just don't know in which tab it is. Maybe I just I suck at these things, maybe it's me, but my understanding is that I think they could do a better job at portraying information to players. And since this is a game focused on multiplayer, unfortunately this means that if you're doing a run by yourself and you want to quit mid-run, which, you know, most games do, it doesn't in this game, because yeah, in multiplayer you wouldn't be able to do it. So great, now I can't do it in single player, and yeah, sometimes the runs are pretty long, so yeah, I've had to just end a run midway because I just didn't have the time. It takes a while to do a lot of things, which again, that's part of the gameplay. That's part of the fun. I actually love having to do everything, right? Like when you get shot by a bunch of stuff and you're alone and you have all these like warning signals and you have to go from one end of the ship to the other and just you have to move, and like it's nerve-wracking, but it's fun. That being said, sometimes it can be a drag to be alone and to like, oh, you could do this mission, but first there's like a special thing over there, and you go over there. It takes a while to get there, and then you leave, and then you go in there and you find this little abandoned ship, and you go in there and you find a little item and you move it to your ship. And that was just like a little roguelike thing. Cool. It took me, you know, 5 to 10 minutes to do that sometimes. As a solo player, I might recommend this game if you just love space and you like having, you know, like your spaceships and you love roguelikes. Yeah, I mean, I've had some fun playing as a single player experience, but in multiplayer, I would say this is where the game shines. So in terms of my overall rating, it's a good time. I think I'm gonna put this as a solid B tier. That has a lot of potential, especially if you have the right group of friends. It has been a good time. I will say, you know, the further along, I feel like I would have to play this game a lot more to really have an accurate rating. As it stands, yeah, I'm gonna put this right around something like that. Last but certainly not least, we've got White Knuckle. White Knuckle is a climbing first-person horror roguelike. So you play as this unfortunate character who's just trying to escape from the living hell that he's living. The gameplay is pretty straightforward. You have 2 hands, left and right mouse. Just grab onto particular areas that you can climb onto, and you just push yourself, and you can jump, and that's about it. The gameplay is fairly minimalistic, but it does take a while to get really, really comfortable with it, and I would say that this game has a very, very high skill ceiling. This game is really unique in many different ways. First off, obviously, I don't think I've heard many games doing this combination of styles. More so, this combines not only just horror and climbing, but it also kind of has this portal vibe to it that is really cool. You're constantly having like someone on the radio, like, you know, saying things like, warning, you have to escape, or warning, you know, like temperature has rised, that kind of stuff. It has a weird comedic aspect in that regard, but it's still a really spooky game. And this is where things get a little interesting, because what I've realized is, as you can see in this trailer, there seems to be a lot of different realms, there's a lot of different biomes, there seems to be a lot. But this game is in early access, and as it stands, this game has a ton of different biomes, a ton of different things you're going to be encountering. You're going to go outside and all that stuff. I mean, without spoiling much, like, as you can see, there seems to be a lot. But I'm willing to bet that if you don't watch this trailer, maybe 50% of people will not see even 80% of what you're seeing. Because the first biome, or the first section of this game, the campaign mode, which is honestly where things are most interesting in my opinion, you're going to be spending just escaping, going up against this big ooze that you just saw, that's constantly rising from the ground. And that section is pretty much always the same. It's just this area right there, and you're just climbing, and it's just all gray, and that's all there is. These biomes that you find outside and everything are way later in the game. And the thing is, this game is really, really hard. And it took me a while to get comfortable and to even get to those end sections. Now, this game is, I think, pretty close to being done. But in the latest patch, it had the last biome released. And after about a week plus of it being released, I had completed a run by finishing that biome. And the achievement I got for completing it, I was part of the 3% of people that had done that. 3% to just complete a run. That's crazy. And my understanding is that, yeah, unfortunately, people are going to miss out on the coolest aspects of this game because of how challenging and punishing the game is. Yes, this game is very punishing in its mechanics. If you fall from pretty high, you might just lose your entire run, and runs take a very long time. There's so many biomes, and I'm kind of surprised that they don't have some more meta progression. I feel like this game would probably do better with some sort of meta progression beyond what they have, because currently what they have is that they have a sort of shortcut system once you've gotten to a particular point. And once you've gotten to those shortcuts, you can now have them at the beginning of every single run. But those shortcuts are so insanely punishing and challenging to go through that they honestly don't feel worth it to me. Like, I feel like the normal path is sometimes faster than the shortcut just because of how cruel they are. So yeah, I kind of wish they would honestly be kinder to new players so that they can experience this really cool thing that you just saw. That, again, I'm not gonna spoil, because I want people to experience it themselves. Most people will not even see the outside area, which is like my favorite part. That's why it's just a weird game in that regard. Just getting comfortable with the mechanics, the fact that like jumping uses stamina, and like holding on with just one hand, or if you're positioned particularly, your stamina is going to deplete differently. All these things take a while to get used to. And honestly, you have to experiment a lot because the game doesn't really give you much information, which is part of the fun. But once you've been like playing a run for like 40 minutes and you're like tight, so tight, like just like, because this is probably one of the most stressful experiences I've had playing a roguelike ever. Once you just kind of lose because you weren't sure that bumping your head against this particular thing was gonna like boop you out and make you fall all the way down to the floor and you lose. Not a great feeling sometimes. Not to mention that a lot of the things that you're going to be finding, like that you're going to be putting into your inventory, everything is going to be a consumable, which, you know, a lot of games we don't like consumable stuff, but here it makes sense because that's just part of the core gameplay to use your things to continue climbing and to use certain consumables. But a lot of the consumables, you don't know where they are, and they don't tell you, which again is part of the mystery of it all, which is great. But in a game like this, where starting over is brutal, it can be kind of annoying to just like having like this thing, this grub, right? The first time you try it, I used it and I still don't know what I did, and it took me a while to understand what I did. Which, yeah, that's part of the fun, but in a game that's just this punishing, it's it's mean. The roguelike elements are fairly minimalistic. There's going to be some passives that you're going to be finding here and there. Some of them are much more impactful than others, in my opinion. I wish there were more passives. That being said, there's a lot of secrets. This game has a ton of secrets. It kind of reminded me a little bit of Inscription in some ways, where like the community is awesome. Like they found a way to go into the debug world, and you have to find like a secret area that you have to type in like the terminal, and then you can access this super secret place that you would never ever find unless you looked it up. Those are cool. And a game like this that, you know, is all about spookiness, it really is immersive and engaging. And again, this is a brutal experience, absolutely a hardcore experience, which was really fun. But seriously, the first time I beat the game in its most recent patch, my fingers were hurting because of how tight I was holding my mouse. It is so intense. And I could imagine some people would find that not really compelling, while others will instead. So if that sounds interesting to you, definitely try this one out, because this is a very unique game with the really, really, really solid foundation and some awesome biomes that you've got to get to. Trust me, once you get the mechanics down and you're comfortable with the gameplay, please stick to this game, because the things that this game hides later on are awesome. And I really, really do hope they make it easier for people to get to. Because currently that's my biggest issue, is that it just takes too long to get there. Outside of that, the game does have other game modes. There is a roguelike game mode that's more focused on just pure random stuff. That's cool. It's enjoyable. It does have more replayability. To me, this is more of like a full-on adventure that once you've beaten the game, congratulations, you did it. The randomness comes from the random level layout, which again, the biomes are always going to be the same where they are. I think you might have some different biomes that can spawn, but they're roughly the same. So it's more just picking from a library of possible room layouts, similar to Shovel Knight Dig, I think it's called. But I do hope they expand even more on the possible room layout that you can find, because obviously once you've seen everything, yeah, it gets a little bit more repetitive. But yeah, overall, if you haven't discovered everything in the game has to offer, man, this game is cool. I had such a crazy time with it. It's a hard game to recommend, naturally, because it's very specific. But if this looks interesting to you, you've got to try it out. It is so unique. And it's in its current early access, I'm going to put this as a really solid A, because of just how unique and enjoyable the gameplay is. It's really cool. All right, there you go. That's my final list. I moved a little few things here around. I put Spell Brigade under Deep Rock Galaxy Survivor. I always forget the name of the game. It only took me about 5 hours. Woo! Once again, these are just my own opinions on these games. So if you disagree and if you'd like to give me your thoughts on some of these games, feel free to do so in the comments below. I'd love to hear everybody's opinion, whether you agree, whether you disagree. Thank you once again for all your support. I really, really appreciate it. And we're going to continue releasing those tier lists every few months as we have more and more games to play. I think I have like 15 games already in my wish list that I'm just going to have to get very soon. So yeah, make sure to like and subscribe if you'd like more of this stuff. It really helps the channel out. And yeah, I'm really tired and hungry. So I'm just gonna go.